You know how these go. Let's just start. Furries. Furries refer to a group of people that like funny cartoon animals, more or less. Contrary to popular belief, it isn't always necessarily a sex. However, there are some who do the concept and like to get dressed up in costumes known as fursuits. Some furries may even engage in an act known as yiffing with their fursuits on. I'll leave the definition of that slang to your imagination. Many furries are actually quite talented craftsmen that design and create their own fursuits to express their inner persona. Some detractors think that those who fall into the fetish category may be on a slippery slope to doing things with animals that people shouldn't do with animals. This isn't always the case, but there are a few infamous examples of when this has happened, such as the story of Kiro the Wolf. I'd refer you to a video by Turkey Tom on that matter, as I don't want to talk about people that do that kind of thing. Also, to just get a more general, in-depth history lesson, I'd also link to a video by Fredrik Knudsen, I'm not sure how to say his last name, down the rabbit hole guy. He did a video a while back about the history of furries. So check that one out if you want to hear the full historical context. For the most part, furries are actually pretty chill, but like all massive fandoms, there's bound to be a creep or two, like the aforementioned Kiro. There's also a stereotype that furries are suspiciously wealthy. There's been some furries that have paid an insane amount for art commissions. I honestly don't know what's up with that. I'd actually recommend a video by Izizi. That Scottish girl with the crazy makeup. I'd recommend a video by her on one of the most expensive furry commissions ever. As the video progresses, I will plug other videos you can watch to get a bigger picture of each of these entries and leave them linked in the description. This iceberg was made more to give a general overview on each entry. Anyway, that was furries. Everyone knows about them by now. They even have a convention called FurCon.
The Chicago Tribune, 19 people were hospitalized at a furry convention in Illinois after what's being called an intentional leak of chlorine
What's
gas.
A furry convention?
Did I get that wrong?
A leak there? Oh, gosh.
Okay. Officials were called when a strong odor of chlorine spread.
I think they had to evacuate the building and everything. Sent the hotel guests along with convention attendees into the cold night. Many still dressed in their furry costumes.
We have a lot of costumers out here with big fluffy costumes that'll keep people warm, so at this point, we're not at all worried.
Van Gogh. Vincent van Gogh was an artist from the Impressionist era that I'm not going to go too in depth about. Practically everyone who has an inkling or knowledge of the art world has heard this name or seen his work. He's been sort of romanticized as the poster boy of the starving artist stereotype, as he was very unsuccessful when he was alive. He only ever sold one painting while alive to his brother, but his impact on the art world is still felt today. There's of course the infamous ear incident. The poor guy suffered through mental illness in a time when it was severely mishandled and often dismissed and treatments were neglected. Some of his work still serves to inspire and motivate many artists to this day, including his self-portraits and Starry Night, as well as his many recreations of The Sower. Rule 34. Rule 34. If it exists, there is porn of it. If there is no porn of it will be made. This is Rule 34 of the internet. This is taken from a copy pasta from way back in the 2000s. There's even dedicated websites to this. It's probably the only rule that's remained consistently of this crusty ancient meme. There are artists that make a living drawing recreations of various characters from all kinds of medium. There's not much more to say. People are horny. Moving along. Taxidermy. Taxidermy is classified as an art form, but I think most people these days would find it kind of weird and cruel. Essentially, it's taking the dead body of an animal and stuffing it to be displayed. Over the years, there have been various laws and changes to laws around which animals can and cannot be used in the practice of taxidermy. There are some artists that take pieces from various animals and combine them together in their pieces. Some of these creations might be perceived as cool, but then again, you gotta understand these artists were playing with animal corpses. I don't know. Forgive me for being subjective here, but I just think it's odd. Taxidermy is still practiced to this day. Butch Hartman. Oh boy, where do we even start? Butch Hartman is an American animator best known for his shows Fairly Odd Parents and Danny Phantom. He was once known to be a friendly guy that engaged with fans of his work via his social media presence, but ran into many controversies over the years. There is, of course, the incident where it appeared that he was tracing fan artwork for commissions of which many deemed overpriced and inconsistent in quality. There was a live stream incident where he was clearly triggered by someone's comments about not liking one of his recent works.
Someone says, what do I think of the Oaxis Family Guy meme? Oh, I'm not even going to look at it because it's the question's being asked by Dueling Duelist. I'm not even going to look at it, and I don't care. Because you know why? Whenever you put yourself out there to do anything, there's always someone that's going to try and bring you down because they've never done anything on their own. And so if someone wants to do something and they want to ask me questions like that, that's one thing. But if someone doesn't do anything and they want to criticize, then I have no time for them. No time for them. So the person that asked that question, whose name will not be mentioned ever by my lips, I just want to tell all people like that, as I get back to safety here, that if you guys can't do it yourselves, you shouldn't criticize anybody else. You really shouldn't. Now, another cartoonist wants to have a problem with me or whatever, that's a different story. But at least somebody who's actually done something I'll talk to or talk about.
Speaking of theme songs.
Theme songs. You know what's funny? Wait, I want to say one more thing.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
as many things as I've done in my life, like being a father, being a husband, being a guy who's in his 50s who's a boss, a guy who's done shows, a guy who's stayed up late at night working really hard, to answer questions from people who've never done anything and they want to criticize, it makes me laugh. It makes me laugh. It's like, really? That's your question? So it's quite amusing, actually. So good luck out there trying to get a rise out of me, because you never will.
And of course, there was the Oaxis streaming service bait and switch plan. Before I talk about that, I must mention Butch Hartman is an outspoken and devout Christian. No problem with that. Believe in what you want. I don't care. But before we get to Oaxis, we have to talk about the Noog network. Believe it or not, Butch has actually attempted streaming services 3 times. First, there was the Noog network, which was branding as safe content for kids to consume online. Then there was, of course, Oaxis. This one was advertised as another streaming service similar to the Noog network, but there was a crowdfunding campaign for this. A lot of people thought, oh yeah, it's that Danny Phantom Fairly Odd Parents guy. I'll throw him a buck for this, because a lot of people are from Boston, apparently. And one thing Butch forgot to mention was that the Oaxis network was intended to have Christian religious content. Most people wouldn't have cared if he said that outright from the start, but not disclosing this information led many critics speaking against him. Eventually, Oaxis was scrapped, but Butch did go through with a Christian streaming service called PureFlix, and is currently working on a show called The Garden, clearly based off the story of Adam and Eve from the Bible. For a more in-depth look at Butch Hartman and his controversies, I'd recommend a video by Saberspack. As I said prior, all supplemental materials will be linked in the description. Juni EO. Juni EO is a Japanese mangaka, most known for his horror stories. When someone talks about horror manga, Ito is probably the first name that comes up. He's known for his highly detailed panels with heavy blacks and a carpal tunnel-inducing amount of hatching and cross-hatching. His most famous work is probably Uzumaki. My personal favorite is Tomie. If you want just a taste of his work, I recommend his short story, The Enigma of Amigara Fault. I have a whole video reviewing his entire bibliography that was easily available and translated to English somewhere in my back catalog. That video is kind of old, so I can't really recall what I said in it. But if you're looking for something to watch after this video, there's one for you. Juni EO is still working on his craft to this day, and at the time of recording this, almost all, if not all, of his works had been translated into English. Beksinksi. Beksinksi is a very difficult name for this American. Also one of the greatest dark surrealist painters of all time. He's known for his surrealistic hellscapes and creatures. His palette is very much on the muddy, rusty side, and that helped bring out a somber tone in his work. There's not much more to say about this guy. The guy was a great painter, and I wanted to share that with you if you were unfamiliar. You know, I just really like his stuff. Art of the Mentally Ill. As the name implies, this entry refers to artwork created by people afflicted with various mental illnesses. It is kind of interesting to see if and how their mental conditions affected their work. For instance, the works of Brian Charnley. Charnley was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. He created many self-portraits as his condition gradually worsened. It's interesting to see what changes were made as he went along. Tragically, Charnley ended up taking his own life, but has left behind a beautiful body of work. I should also note that just because a person has a mental illness, their artwork shouldn't be used as a diagnostic tool or even fetishized in some cases. A person with a mental illness contributions to the art world are just as important and valid as a person without one. Also, there's a stereotype, not as common as it used to be, but still present, that artists that make stuff that might be classified as a little weird, or maybe more on the surrealistic side, suffer from some kind of mental illness. This isn't as prevalent as it used to be, but it's still somewhat of a thing. That line of thinking is quite cruel and insulting. Mental illnesses are a serious problem, and no one should feel any shame for seeking help. If you'd like to see a more in-depth look at various works from people who have suffered from mental illnesses, I'd recommend a few videos by Shrouded Hand. I'd also recommend putting the subtitles on because his Scottish accent is thick. Art roasters. Oh boy, I've been waiting to get to this one. Art roasters are the declination of the YouTube art community, and I've got a bone to pick with them. Art roasting is a genre of YouTube video where someone will give critique, or better yet criticism, solicited or unsolicited, to usually beginner artists. The genre rose to prominence in the very late 2010s with YouTuber Ethan Becker. Ethan is an animator and art teacher that rose to YouTube fame by calling out artists like Kim Jong-gi for not drawing exactly like him. He is also a Kuleen defender, which I will most definitely get to Kuleen in a later entry. Keep watching. He played a character in these videos, which he ended up retiring because a lot of people couldn't tell. However, after retiring this character, he continued to make the exact same type of content and presenting himself almost identically to his character. Frequently, he would post videos calling out popular artists for not drawing exactly like him, with the most minor of tips that are only applicable in very specific situations. His content is still quite popular today and fostered a community of toxic art roasters. Coming to mind is, of course, Sam Does Arts and Kuleen. Kuleen has her own entry, but on the subject of Sam Does Arts, he at least asks for submissions who know they're going to get roasted. However, he is constantly going over artwork by beginners, very obviously beginners, and while not offering any advice or tips on how to improve, often just goes, "Ha, hand look funny." Oh, I'm sorry. Haha, hand so funny. Look at a little art baby. I gotta talk really low so my parents don't hear me recording. Because he calls his viewers art babies. Sorry, Sam Does Arts fans. I just don't get it. I recommend watching Marco Bucci or Mark Brunette if you actually want to improve and get good advice and lessons. Submitting to an art roaster is only going to make the audience think you have a humiliation kink. Moving along. Please stop this trend. I hate it. Unfortunately, the algorithm loves it. Moving on. NFTs. NFTs, or non-fungible tokens, are probably one of, if not the worst thing to happen to the art world. Essentially, an NFT is a specific code to an image. To break this down, if you upload an image to the internet, it can be right-click saved and infinitely copied. If you were to mint it into an NFT, it would have its own unique code that could be purchased with cryptocurrency. So you're not technically buying the image, you're buying the unique code to the image. We have a lot of vocab to cover, so pay attention, class. Cryptocurrency is stuff like Bitcoin, Dogecoin, Ethereum, etc. It's essentially digitized money in layman's terms. It can be purchased in exchange for real currency. The key difference between cryptocurrency and real money is that cryptocurrency is decentralized and not controlled by the government of your country. These coins are also classified as deflative currency rather than inflative ones like dollars or euros. Bitcoins, for instance, eventually every Bitcoin will be made, which will increase their value. Scarcity equals value mentality. This is backed by a public ledger known as the blockchain. Everyone's crypto wallet is visible to the public. You can see every exchange of crypto ever made. This blockchain is also what backs the purchases of NFTs. On to minting. Minting is the act of creating an NFT. First, you need an image. Then you take that image and mint via gas fees. So in order to turn an image into an NFT, tons of GPUs or graphics cards needs to process countless complex equations. This takes what's known as a crypto farm. Warehouses filled with computers with high-powered GPUs. To mint, you pay the owner of these crypto farms to do it for you, a la gas fees. This, however, brings environmental concerns. The power it takes to mint a single NFT is equivalent to the amount of power the average European household uses in an entire year. A lot of artists refuse to create NFTs for this reason alone. Once minted, an NFT needs to go to a digital marketplace like OpenSea, where crypto bros can waste money on ugly artwork, some of which is AI generated. This whole thing seems like an elaborate money laundering scheme from the outside looking in. NFTs rose to popularity when popular artist Beeple sold one for $69 million. The story broke through art circles and hit mainstream news. Then a bunch of people got greedy and flooded the market. A bubble was created and crashed within the span of 2 years, more or less. There are still people making NFTs to this day, however. NFTs are also heavily associated with scams. I'm sure we've all had those robotic Instagram messages pop up in our feeds, but Instagram bots will have their own entry. Overall, I think they're just kind of a waste of time. If you want my initial reaction to the NFT boom before the bubble bursted, there's an old video on this channel you can watch. Link in the description. AI art. Oh boy. Those familiar with the channel are ready for this one. So, AI art refers to images created with artificial intelligence and machine learning. Basically, to keep it brief, computers are trained off of databases of images to generate new images, more or less. There's a lot of controversy around AI art and AI in general, especially in these last few years as the technology has gotten better. Many of the popular AI generators, such as Stable Diffusion, Dali, and Midjourney, have come under legal troubles because the databases of images that they use to create art contain copyrighted material. One could also train an AI on stolen artwork as well, such as the Sam Does Arts incident for reference. There have also been nefarious uses for AI art, such as deceptive propaganda and illegal pornography. Basically, it's a whole thing. If you want my personal thoughts on it, just look through the backlog of my videos. What this entry is actually mainly referring to is just how bizarre some of these renders can get. The modern version of AI renders always hit that uncanny valley. If you're unaware, the uncanny valley refers to something that looks human but something just isn't right. There are ways to spot AI art if you're unsure. The key areas are eyes and hands, as well as legs, in my opinion. I keep seeing renderings of weird legs in recent days. I don't know, probably because these AI models are being trained off of their own bad renders. I want to talk about earlier attempts at AI art. Artbreeder was one of my favorites before the advancements happened and greed took over. But we'll talk about greed in the next entry. These renders were insane, so much so that I actually used them to reinterpret into creature designs. Once again, check my older videos. I believe there was also a video by Nexpo looking at some of AI's horrifying renders, so check that one out too. AI art prompting classes. Remember when I said greed took over? Well, this is one of the things I was talking about. Aside from people making AI art renders based off of stolen artwork, minting them into NFTs, and even going so far as to sell AI pieces at conventions without disclosing that they were AI generated, because, well, most artists would probably have a bone to pick with the AI bro, to say the least. But anyway, this one specifically refers to AI art prompting classes, which are quite a Nigerian prince level scam. You have to have a negative IQ to fall for this. But a lot of AI art bros do. Essentially, you pay someone to teach you how to write stuff into the AI prompt. Mind blowing. Really, these people are scummy. Don't give them a dime. Speaking about scummy, Google's racist AI. Google's racist AI refers to Google Gemini. Gemini was their attempt to enter the AI art generator market, and when people got around to playing with it, well, it showed a clear racial favoritism. In short, it wouldn't generate white people. Even if you specifically typed white or some historical figure who is known to be white, it would blackwash them. After a bit of digging, people found out that the lead programmer was big into the whole woke culture stuff, you know, DEI, ESG, all that stuff. And it seemed that this was deliberate. I believe they even briefly shelved it because of the backlash to refusing to generate a single white person. I don't know. I don't really care. It's more AI slop. Who cares, honestly? Nothing will ever truly replace human artists. Speaking of human artists, Hermanus Bosch. Hermanus Bosch was a Dutch proto-Renaissance painter that specialized in all things horrifying and surreal. One could argue that he was the godfather of horror art and dark surrealism. He was frequently commissioned by the Catholic Church to illustrate and paint depictions of hell and the horrors within. There has been some speculation that he may have suffered from some kind of mental illness or had been exposed to chemicals that altered his perception to create these hellscapes or something like that. However, that's just speculation, and as stated in the Art by the Mentally Ill entry, spooky art does not mean mental illness, and that's a rude assumption. His most famous work is his triptych, The Garden of Earthly Delights. He's also one of my favorite Renaissance artists, so that's kind of why I wanted to put that there to show off one of my favorite artists. I love his stuff. Anyway, speaking of Renaissance artists, Michelangelo's broken back. Everyone knows Michelangelo from the Renaissance, and of course the Ninja Turtles. There's of course the statue of David, but his other most famous work is of course the secco fresco paintings on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, depicting various scenes from the Bible. In order to paint the ceiling, Michelangelo needed to lie on his back with his arms above him on scaffolding. Looking at how many paintings are on the ceiling and how beautifully detailed they were, it raises the question, what did it cost? Based on research, he experienced lifelong pain to his neck and arms, a rotator cuff tear, and cervical disc degeneration. He also most likely experienced vertigo, and it goes without saying he definitely had back pain. He even wrote about it. Quote, "I've already grown a goiter from this torture, hunched up here like a cat in Lombardy, or anywhere else where the stagnant water's poison. My stomach squashed under my chin, my beard's pointing at heaven, my brain's crushed in a casket, my breast twists like a harpy's. My brush above me all the time dribbles paint to my face, makes a fine floor for droppings. My haunches are grinding into my guts. My poor ass strains to work as a counterweight. Every gesture I make is blind and aimless. My skin hangs loose below me. My spine's all knotted from folding over itself. I'm bent taut as a Syrian bow. Because I'm stuck like this, my thoughts are crazy, perfidious tripe. Anyone shoots badly through a crooked blowpipe. My painting is dead. Defend it for me, Giovanni. Protect my honor. I am not in the right place. I am not a painter." End quote. Ow, that sounds painful. Speaking about pain, let's talk about another Renaissance painter that inflicted pain to others. Caravaggios Murder. Caravaggio is arguably one of the most important Renaissance painters of his era. He was at the head of the Baroque movement, which shifted paintings from very stiff to these lively, dynamic figures and intense lighting, which still influences the art world to this day. And as someone who has seen Caravaggios in person, I will add, yes, that they are incredible works. They're beautiful. Amazing paintings. However, Caravaggio himself, not such a nice guy to say the least. He had a notorious temper and even went as far as to commit murder. Apparently there was a brawl between him and an individual named Ranuccio Tomasoni. Historians can't pin down the exact reason the brawl occurred. Some sources say it was over some kind of debt. Other sources say it was over a tennis match of all things. The murder occurred in May of 1606. Some evidence suggests that Caravaggio was only trying to wound him but not kill him, but come on, why are you pulling a sword if you don't intend to kill? He fled Rome after the incident and ended up in Naples. There's a paper trail of work from him from 1606 to his inevitable death in 1610, which was deemed mysterious by all the historians I'm reading for this entry. Whatever that means. Mysterious for whatever reason. There's also debates of whether or not these paintings are really attributed to Caravaggio or artists inspired by his work, as he was a big shot when he ran away. And being a big shot, much like it still is today, he actually got away with murder. He received an official pardon from Pope Paul V. This pardon, however, did come after his mysterious death, but for the last 4 years of his life he remained in hiding, running from the consequences of his actions. Francis Bacon. Francis Bacon was a surrealist / abstract / horror artist who lived from 1909 to 1992. His paintings are quite unsettling and depict horrific interpretations of people that may even be classified as body horror. A lot of his paintings stem from various traumas, having lived through 2 world wars. He was also a gay man at a time when homosexuality was still being demonized, and even in some cases considered a mental illness. Luckily, by the time he passed, people had become more understanding of homosexuality and accepting of gay people. There is one particular incident of note that I want to mention for this entry. And that was the self-deletion of George Dyer. Forgive me for using that word, but you know, on YouTube you can't say the S word. It's an auto flag. I have to say self-deletion instead. Forgive me, I know it's a little disrespectful. Dyer was a close friend and even speculated to be a lover of bacon. I mean, who doesn't love bacon? Francis Bacon, I mean. In 1971, when Francis Bacon was unveiling a retrospective exhibition, he ended his life immediately before the opening. There have been some speculations and conspiracies around the matter, but all in all, the event tragically affected Bacon and influenced his work going forward. Bacon was a bit of an odd guy, to say the least. There were also instances of him getting his own paintings destroyed because he was dissatisfied with them. I'd highly recommend a documentary called Francis Bacon, A Brush with Violence to get the full picture. If it's still available on YouTube at the time of posting this, I will link it in the description. Salvador Dali's pet anteater. Salvador Dali was the guy when it came to surrealism art at the turn of the century. His most famous of work is, of course, The Persistence of Memory. Side note, this painting is actually smaller than a standard piece of American printer paper. Dali was a very eccentric guy, to say the least. He dabbled in many mediums, even made some movies, but he is, of course, most known for his paintings. This entry just refers to one thing I thought that was just kind of odd, you know? Like, he had a pet anteater named Babu, or Babo. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing it wrong. And he was often seen with the anteater on the streets of Paris. I just think this is odd, and I wanted to let you know about it, and to put this picture on screen. As for the dark, weird, and controversial, this definitely just falls into the weird category. But our next entry is going back to the dark category. Chris Chan and Sonichu. Worthy of an iceberg all its own. Chris Chan, birth name Christopher Weston Chandler, later changed to Christian Weston Chandler, changed once again to Christian Ricardo Weston Chandler, once again changed to Christine Ricardo Weston Chandler, once again changed to Christine Ricardo Weston Chandler, CPU Goddess Blueheart, changed once more to Christine Ricardo Weston Chandler, CPU Goddess Blueheart Chris Chan Sonichu, and recently changed the Jesus Christ Christine Ricardo Weston Chandler, CPU Goddess Blueheart Chris Chan Sonichu, is quite the character, with many names. That's a lot of names. But he's most known as Chris Chan. So Chris Chan is what is known as a lol cow, arguably the first one. In short, they're basically people that feed the trolls and can be milked for laughs, hence lol cow. He rose up to prominence mostly from his attraction sign seeking a boyfriend-free girl that he posted around his community college campus, but also for the reason he's technically an artist. And that's, of course, the infamous webcomic Sonichu. Sonichu is a very crudely drawn and hard-to-read comic that was intended to be a mashup of Sonic the Hedgehog and Pikachu from the Pokemon franchise. If you want my thoughts on the comic specifically, check out my Sonichu review. If you want more information on Chris Chan, that rabbit hole is too deep. I'm also not one for trigger warnings, but I'm putting every possible trigger warning imaginable on this one. Research at your own risk. We're just gonna move on. Creepshowart. Speaking of lolcows, Creepshowart is another iceberg of its own worthy entry on this list. Creepshowart, aka Shannon, was an art commentary YouTuber. I will have a more detailed description in tier 2 of this iceberg, but the very brief summary of art commentary YouTubers is that essentially they're channels that make commentary style videos, but instead of gameplay footage, as is tradition for commentary channels, they show artwork. But there's more to it than that. We'll be getting to that in the next tier, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. Anyway, Creepshowart was a very toxic individual that often painted herself as one with moral superiority over others and was exposed for many horrible things. There's of course the blatant allegiance to the hard left ideology, which wouldn't be that much of a problem if she wasn't exposed as a hypocrite. There's a mountain of evidence of her basically being the complete opposite of what she says she stands for anonymously, in quotes, posting on various message boards. There was also the harassment campaign she led against art commentary YouTuber Hopeless Peaches, which has an entry all its own in the next tier. It was honestly quite a nasty situation. And above all, there was the years and years of stalking and harassment of fellow art YouTuber Emily Artful, who was the first person to come forward with mountains upon mountains of evidence of Creepshowart's horrid behavior. There's more, but we'll be here all day. Even some evidence of crimes involving minors. Yeah, it's really disgusting. Like I said earlier, this list is just a general overview of each entry, but some of these are worthy of an iceberg all their own. I'd actually recommend a video by Turkey Tom about this entire saga, but I will warn you it's over 3 hours long and unfortunately contains clips of Creepshowart speaking. This whole thing was quite the news story when it broke in 2021 on YouTube, where even big YouTubers outside of the art tuber sphere were covering it. To be honest, I don't really want to go into more depth about this situation, as there's a chance some of her victims, who are YouTubers, might actually come across this video, and I don't want to risk bringing up their personal traumas, okay? In short, Shannon was a two-face and got what she deserved in the end. Correction to the previous video in this series, YouTuber Izizzy. This YouTuber is actually from New Zealand and not Scottish. Please forgive my ignorant American ears. Anyway, onward to the next tier in the dark, weird, and controversial artist Iceberg. And one more thing, apparently somebody brought to my attention that during the Hermanus Bosch entry, I actually use AI-generated images of his work. So I was just going through grabbing some of his paintings, and I saw these, and I thought they looked kind of cool, and, you know, just for that segment, and I didn't realize that they were AI-generated. Goes once again that 9 times out of 10 AI art looks really bad, but that 10th time they'll get you. And apparently this was the 10th time. So I'm going to double check images going forward when I grab artworks to show you. So yeah. Anyway, moving on. Cancerous Commentary Art Channels. Cancerous Commentary Art Channels is an iceberg of its own worthy entry on this list. This one's a doozy. Okay. So a good parallel to the art commentary community is the beauty community. A whole bunch of petty bullshit and toxic behavior over the most minuscule of things. The only difference is that due to the Creepshowart fallout, the art commentary community has faded away more or less. Believe it or not, this community actually practically has nothing to say about art. Funny that, yeah? Anyway, the main focus of art commentary channels are similar to the standard commentary YouTubers. The key difference is that while standard commentary YouTubers will use gameplay footage, art commentary YouTubers will use art time-lapse footage. While the majority of art commentary YouTubers talk about anything but art, there are a few exceptions that actually do talk about art. Duchess Celestia comes to mind, as well as Trent Kanayuga. I've even dipped my toes in the genre as well, myself. Most art commentary YouTubers, however, just talk shit about stuff that happened on Twitter. Or X, if you're a weirdo. It's mostly died down and the genre isn't as popular as it used to be, particularly due to the Creepshowart fallout, which I talked about in the previous tier. But there are a handful of creators still making videos in this style. Certain events and creators such as Toby and the Hopeless Peaches harassment campaign have their own entry. This one's more of a general overview because if I included every little petty beef that happened in this toxic community, I'd be here all day. There's a video by YouTuber Cecil McFly documenting the entire disaster that was the YouTube art commentary community's rise and fall that is super in-depth. It's literally 4.5 hours long, but I'd recommend it if you want all of the details. Toby, or Toby Majestic, was an art commentary YouTuber. Her first hit was a video called The Faults of Creepshowart, wherein she called Creepshowart out on her bullshit. This video precedes the massive expose and downfall of Creepshowart, which I've already covered. I know. Don't worry, you'll only be hearing about Creepshow one more time in this iceberg. So due to her video being well received by the majority of viewers and even Creepshow herself, albeit more than likely deceptively knowing her toxic history, Toby was the new face of art commentary on YouTube. But this iceberg doesn't have dark and controversial in the title for nothing. So one thing to note is that Toby suffers from borderline personality disorder, or BPD, which more than likely influenced this ordeal, but that's honestly besides the point. Please reference back to the previous tier for what I said about people who suffer from mental illnesses in the art community. Anyway, she made a rant video that, not gonna lie, was pretty based at first.
Such dumb bullshit. I'm sorry, I can't. I have things that are severely more important than this dumb bullshit. First, I'm blocking several drama channels, well, every drama channel, and several commentary channels because I've had had it. Sick and tired of commentary channels and drama channels that severely hyper-criticize and pick apart every single little thing that somebody does online.
But she pivoted and started defending people that the art commentary community didn't like, and honestly, she didn't articulate herself all that well. There was some blatant hypocrisy to it, though. She hated those drama/commentary channels while being one herself. Then the story gets messy. A thread for her appeared on one of those lolcow sites like Kiwi Farms Encyclopedia Dramatica or whatever. Who cares? Whatever. I'm pretty sure that it was started by Creepshowart herself because, of course. So her downfall began when she started talking about lolicon/shotacon artwork, which will have an entry in a much later tier, while she was beefing with a creator called Ben the Looney, who will also have an entry in a much later tier. In short, just a brief summary of what that kind of artwork is, well, let's just say Joe Biden probably has an extensive collection of it and leave it at that. So, Toby made a video called It's Still Wrong If It's Drawn, where she was talking about how awful that genre of artwork is, and, well, pot calling the kettle black. As it turned out, she had some kind of alt account where she drew lewd drawings of Sailor Moon and Todoroki from My Worst Fandom on the Internet Academia, both of whom were canonically minors. And one thing led to another, and boom, big cancel party. Whatever. Art commentary YouTuber drama bullshit. The usual. This one is of significant note, however, since it's the first story arc in the Creepshowart saga. To be honest, I can't help but feel a little bad for her, you know, BPD and all that, and being one of Creepshow's victims, but at the same time, hypocrisy much? Oh yeah, and apparently she was a Fujoshi too. And people were angry about that. Honestly, whatever. I feel like most normal people would understand the concept of a heterosexual liking the opposite sex.
Why are straight guys so obsessed with lesbians?
Wow, this chocolate bar sure is good. But you know what would make it better? Wow, another chocolate bar! 2 of a thing I like, together!
But the art commentary community is filled to the brim with hard leftists that are obsessed with sexuality and gay stuff. Once again, that's just a whatever for me. You know, I don't really care. But it might have had an impact on this whole Toby Majestic story arc. Anyway, if you want a more in-depth look at this whole situation, I once again recommend that same video by Cecil McFly. All supplemental videos will be linked in the description. The bullying of hopeless peaches. Okay, I'm actually gonna just gloss over this one because this YouTuber is still active and might actually come across this video, and once again, like I said in the Creepshow entry, I prefer not to bring up another person's personal trauma. In short, Hopeless Peaches is a commentary YouTuber, you know, one of those art commentary YouTubers, and one of Creepshow's victims. To be honest, I'm not really entirely sure where this harassment campaign against her stemmed from, but basically, to what I recall, she did a collaboration with another artist and didn't give credit or something. Then all the art commentary YouTubers started dogpiling on her over the most minuscule of things, even some of whom were coaxing her into committing self-deletion. Sorry for using that phrase again, but, you know, YouTube. It was at this time art commentary YouTubers were popping up like tumors and everyone wanted a piece of the Peaches harassment campaign. You know, to my recollection, I think Creepshow made 3 to 5 videos on her alone. Not to mention all the new channels popping up thinking, oh, talk shit, get paid. Like, man, people really went after her hard. Eventually people realized, hey, we're kind of being dicks. When she left the internet for quite a long time, and she came back eventually and everyone forgot about what the drama was even about. And luckily, Creepshow was gone at this point. Once again, I refer to the art commentary YouTuber's video by Cecil McFly. This one was quite messy, but I'm glad Peaches seems to be doing better these days. Hey guys, Editor John here. So, I was just going about my business and working on this video, got to this segment and went to grab some images and footage for this part when I found out Peaches got herself riled up in some other controversy and, well, new accusations about her have come to light. To be honest, I'm not going to look too much into it, but it seems Peaches might not be so peachy. Honestly, every video I see covering this is 1,000,000 hours long, so from the surface level, it just seems like she falsely accused someone of something or other. You know, to be honest, I'm not that surprised, even having said what I said a minute ago. It is the art commentary community after all. Well, despite Creepshow leaving, the art commentary community is still a cancerous shithole full of toxic, backstabbing lunatics, and I'm done talking about them. Forever. Alright, just walking away from that one. ARGs/analog horror. ARGs and analog horror are technically two different things, but often appear together. An ARG, or alternate reality game, is actually a marketing gimmick, but transformed into an art form all its own. ARGs were designed to be puzzles that take place on and offline, usually to promote a product, but over time became a tool to tell a story. For a marketing example, you can look at Halo 2 Save the Bees campaign. And for a storytelling example, there was, of course, the infamously popular Meat Sleep channel, and Alan Tutorial's a pretty good one.
And he's got, you make a list of his powers. Powers. Oops, you're supposed to have one S. He's got a gun. G is that part.
ARGs, when done well, are some very masterfully crafted and beautiful works of storytelling. However, some are straight poo-poo, to say the least. ARGs rose to popularity in the mid-2010s and are still popular to this day. Analog horror, in my opinion, is somewhat of an offshoot of ARGs. Analog horror refers to another visual storytelling medium in which the creator will use stuff like found footage and emergency bulletins to tell a story. The most famous analog horror is, of course, Local 58. Personally, I prefer ARGs, but I like it the most when the two styles are mixed. For further information, just watch any horror YouTuber ever. Cursed paintings. This entry refers to paintings that are associated with some kind of supernatural or paranormal phenomenon. Over the years, there have been some documented cases of paintings potentially being tainted with bad voodoo. One infamous example is a painting called The Crying Boy, which was in 3 house fires and never burned. After some investigation, people realized that it was coated in some kind of flame-retardant material. There's also this recreation of a photo of a wagon that allegedly caught a ghost and the polar bears that make students fail tests. One of my favorites in terms of artwork is The Anguished Man, but this one isn't actually cursed and is part of an ARG. I just think it's a sick painting, bro. There's also The Hands Resist Him, which was labeled as cursed, so an eBay seller could make big bucks. The artist of this painting liked the lore created around his painting so much he even made a sequel. Pretty spooky stuff. For the most part, most of these cursed paintings are more than likely not cursed, but you never know. Anyway, leave a comment down below if you would like me to make a cursed painting tier list, going over the actual artwork and not the lore around them. Alright, moving along. Art heist. Art heists refer to times when museum-level pieces of artwork have been stolen and heisted. There are black markets for this stuff. Here's a few cases for you. During 2020, during the pandemic lockdowns, the Parsonage Garden at Newenen in Spring by Vincent van Gogh was stolen from the Singer-Laren Museum in the Netherlands. Allegedly, the thief smashed through the glass and drove off with the painting on a motorcycle. Now that's some Ocean's 11 ass shit right there. Anyway, the painting was anonymously returned in an IKEA bag in 2023. Canada had their biggest art heist in 1972. This event is known as the 1972 Montreal Museum of Fine Arts robbery. The paintings the thieves made off with were as follows. Bear with me because some of these titles are in French and I don't speak French. So I'll do my best. Landscape with vehicle and cattle attributed at the time to Jean Bruchel the Elder, but later reattributed to his students. Alright. Subsequently recovered. Apparently they did find that one. Landscape with buildings and wagon by Jan Bruegel the Elder, once again. Alright, here we go. Here's the French. La Veilleuse à la Fontaine. The Dreaming Woman in the Fountain by Jean-Baptiste Camille Corot. Géant filet accoudé sur le bras gauche. Young girl learning on her left arm. I am so sorry to my French viewers. Once again by Corot, or Corot, whatever, however you say that. Landscape with Rocks and Steam by Gustave Courbet. Head by Honoré Daumier. Lioness and Lion in the Cave by Eugène Delacroix. The Sorceress by Narcisse Virgilio Diaz. Portrait of Brigadier General Sir Thomas Fletcher by Thomas Gainsborough. There we go. There's a white name for this white boy. Still Life Vanitas by Jean-David Stahim. Still Life with a Fish, also by Dahim. Laboratrice. Young Woman Churning by Jean-Francois Millet. Portrait of Madame Millet by Millet. Portrait of a Man, possibly a self-portrait by Giovanni Battista Piazzetta. Landscape with Cottages by Rembrandt van Rijn. Head of a Young Man by Peter Paul Rubens. Portrait of a Lady by Francois-André Vincent. And a Portrait of a Man by that same artist. Apparently there were 3 perpetrators, and to this day they have never been found. Apparently, based on my research, they came in through the skylight and bound and gagged the guards at 2 a.m. It's freaking wild, man. Alright, one more before moving on. There was a sculptor named Henry Moore based in England. He made some weird stuff. But in 2005, one of his sculptures was stolen. This sculpture was appraised at $18 million and weighed 2 tons. Somehow, thieves took the 2-ton statue and it just disappeared. Most likely melted down for scrap. It may have been appraised for $18 million, but in scrap, it was just around $1,600. Ironic. Anyway, art heists, once again, are another entry that could have an iceberg all its own. Moving on. Tumblr. Tumblr refers to the website of the same name. Tumblr is a social networking and microblogging website similar to Twitter or X that was founded in 2007. The website was at first known for its hard-left social justice warrior post. All that gender stuff that I really don't care about. You know, you do you, boo-boo. But it was particularly popular among artists, particularly not safe for work type artists. It was pretty well known for its adult content. In 2018, it started applying stricter policies to its adult content and lost around 30% of its user base, most of whom migrated to, at the time, Twitter. Tumblr eased up restrictions in 2022 on adult content, but the damage was done. This website is just a minor blip in places where spicy artists got to share their work, but it eventually altered into something else and no one can see those artists' works anymore. The site is still up, but I personally don't recommend it. If you are an NSFW artist, Twitter or X and Newgrounds would probably be a better venue in my opinion. JoeCat's cancellation. JoeCat was an animator and probably the gayest straight man alive. No, I'm sorry, that's part of the story. It really is. So on a stream, he said he liked girls, sang a little song, and moved on with his life. He then took the clip and made a little animation to it. Most normal people were like, whatever, but other people saw it and it made people so fucking angry. Like, so mad. And I'm not sure who, to be honest. I think most of the hate campaign was coming from the right-wing side of the internet, who were all like, you show your fancy girls, mate, oi? You got a license for heterosexuality, eh? Why are they British? Why aren't you British? Or it could have been LGBT viewers that felt betrayed by JoeCat being heterosexual. His art style was very Steven Universe looking, and in my opinion, I often see that style associated with the LGBT community. I know you do too. Was it people who were just angered that someone would change the lyrics to a Lizzo song? Could be. I think it was a Lizzo song. I don't really care. Was it just trolls? Maybe. Basically, the harassment drove him off the internet, and to my knowledge, he hasn't returned since. However, I should note one detail. Hogwarts Legacy was a game. It was based off of books by J.K. Rowling. Trans people don't like J.K. Rowling. JoeCat was one of the allies that was going apeshit with the threats, among other things, during the Wizard Game Bad era of Twitter. So, kind of funny how the tables turn. I'd also like to ask, how does playing a video game equate to literally ending another person's life? Whatever, I didn't buy it, not because of the controversy, but because it was a shitty Western game. JoeCat just kind of disappeared. Despite everything, I hope he's doing okay, honestly. By the way, no one is ever truly cancelled. You're only cancelled if you let them cancel you. Anyway, on to the next entry. Instagram cancer. Oh boy. This is an extensive one. Here we go. Have you ever posted your art on Instagram? Sure you have. We all have. And we all have seen the DM for promo bots. It's an absurdly bad problem with Instagram. So much so that I personally banned the words promo and DM from my comments section there. And Zuck the fuck still hasn't done shit about it. There was also an uprising in AI artists during the initial AI art boom that are still posting shit content. I've seen some of them pop up on my suggested section, and I've even recognized the art that was bastardized in some of these recreations. I once saw one make an ugly edit of a panel of Kentaro Miura's Berserk where the AI artist literally deflated Morta's breasts, which is a crime against humanity in my opinion. But AI trash isn't the only problem. Show of hands. How many of you had someone DM you, bro, we can make their NFTs and make big crypto bucks her derf. Oh, all of you? Yeah. I'm assuming some of these are bots, but crypto NFT AI bros all sound so much alike one another they might as well be. Then there's reposters. Getting your art reposted to another account with more followers and getting tagged used to be a nice way to grow your Instagram. Now it's not, but we'll get to that. Reposters used to ask for permission before posting stuff and credit others. Now there are just accounts that grab other artists' work and post them without credit. Sometimes they'll snarkily remark, credit the artist if you know who it is, like, bitch, it's the fucking person you stole it from. Anyway, Anyway, Instagram is in a steep decline ever since they introduced Reels and shifted the platform from being image-based to a TikTok clone, and posting Reels is the only way to get engagement, if that. The only way I know for sure to grow on Instagram is one of two methods. One, buy ads, and you gotta actually spend a lot if you actually want to get seen. Or two, get big on a different platform. The algorithms that Instagram operates under have been so fucked that I honestly wouldn't recommend Instagram for artists. Or anyone for that matter. Most of the content's trash anyway. Not to mention the Twitter clone threads that they pushed out that might as well just be Twitter before Elon bought it, as it's filled to the brim with one-sided political arguments. Twitter may be a cancer, but at least it's a cancer coming from two sides. I love reading a good old-fashioned Twitter fight, but Threads is awful. Anyway, Instagram is cannibalizing itself by not removing the cornucopia of bots, and it's actually unbelievable how bad the app has become. Moving on. Shadman / Shadbase. We gotta talk about Shadman. I don't want to talk about Shadman. Alright, okay. So, Shadman or Shadbase was an extremely controversial artist who gained quite a bit of popularity during the anti-SJW era of online content. You know, the Ben Shapiro owning feminists compilation days. Good old days. Shadman, not to be confused with Jazza's brother Shad, liked to draw. What did he like to draw? Take a wild guess. What's that, portraits? Nah. Landscapes? Wishful thinking. Huh? Pornography? Ding, 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 ding. Yeah, he was a porn artist, but it gets worse. Most artists don't really give a shit if you draw NSFW art. Hell, I follow quite a few NSFW artists quite closely because of how good they are. But there's one offshoot of illustrated pornography that makes my stomach churn, and that is, of course, Lolicon. I actually already gave my thoughts about this in my localizers video, but to reiterate most normal people's stances, yeah, I understand that it's just a drawing, but also like, what the fuck? You know? Anyway, you may be thinking that he only drew fictional characters that didn't exist, which, by the way, we'll be talking in depth about people who care about the ages of fictional characters when we get to the Genshin Impact community entry. Shadman took it upon himself to draw disgusting images of real-world minors. Yeah, he did. Technically, not a crime, but definitely something gross and disgusting and depraved. There were once many people that supported him, you know, that were like all for the free speech and freedom of expression angle, but they became detractors after this incident. Some people, like the aforementioned Ben the Looney, who's getting his own entry, stood by him during this time. So you would think after doing it once and, you know, the massive backlash and, you know, all these people becoming detractors, he would not do it again. Yeah, he fucking did it again. Eventually, people turned on him and he kind of faded to the background until getting arrested for assault with a deadly weapon in LA on October 21st, 2021. Honestly, not the crime I thought he'd be arrested for. Anyway, if you want a more in-depth look at this entry, I'd recommend a video essay by Turkey Tom, but, you know, it's a little gross. Todd McFarland doesn't go to the bathroom. Okay, so we need a bit of a palate cleanser after that previous entry, so here's a funny one. Todd McFarland, most known for his run on Spider-Man as well as Spawn and Image Comics, does a lot of conventions like Comic-Con and the like, as you'd expect. Now, working cons, you probably need to take a bathroom break every once in a while, especially if you're going to be there all day. Well, apparently, McFarland has gone on record to say that he never uses the bathroom while working at cons. He said, quote, "If nothing goes in the top hole, nothing comes out of the bottom holes." Eh? Because he's Canadian. End quote. No, he didn't say the A. I threw that on there. This raises so many questions, but I'm just going to leave it at that. We're going to move on. Newgrounds. Newgrounds is arguably one of the most important websites in the digital era of art history. Created in July of 1995, this was one of the first websites on the internet to allow artists to upload their work. Most known for its flash games and animations, it also served as a social networking site where creators could communicate to collaborate on projects. Artists, animators, programmers, musicians, just general creators working together for the first time over the internet. Newgrounds is known for its unfiltered and uncensored style. You know, it's very edgy. It's kind of what it's associated with. Having said that, Newgrounds has found itself in many controversies over the years. This website could be an iceberg of its own considering how long it's been around, but one of its most well-known controversies are its many mass shooting games. Games like Super Columbine RPG and VTech Rampage. Yeah. These games caused a ton of controversy and were just people being super edgy, honestly. I should also note that the creator of VTech Rampage actually made a second game about school shootings and intended it to be more of a social commentary, which even included a short speech about gun violence, but that one was taken down. However, VTech Rampage, which was the edgelord shitpost, remained. Ironic. I'd recommend an episode of the Netlore podcast to get more insight into this, linked in the description. These days, Newgrounds is more known for its degenerate NSFW art. Like I mentioned prior, if you were a Tumblr NSFW artist refugee, this might have been a good venue for you to have migrated to. Also, there's a really popular game called Friday Night Funkin' that was big for a while, that gave the website a little boost, although that game itself has quite the interesting fandom, to say the least. Newgrounds is still running to this day, nearly 30 years later, which is a hell of a run. There are still people making content and sharing art over there, myself included, and I appreciate the unfiltered, uncensored approach. Deviant Art. Deviant Art is a site that does have its own Iceberg. I'll link to a video by Dylan the Night Owl for that, but be warned, it's literally almost 10 hours long. Yeah, it's a big one. DeviantArt was a website founded in August of 2000, intended to be a place that artists could share work and act somewhat of a social network specifically for artists. There are many weird things about DeviantArt, but here are a few things of note. So, there's a genre called adoptables, where artists create characters, usually furries, and other users can more or less buy them, sometimes with DeviantArt's fake currency, coins or tokens or badges or whatever the hell they're calling them these days, or even real-world money. It's quite an interesting concept. Also, there's a ton of fetish artwork on DeviantArt. It's even somewhat known for it. People only know that inflation fetishes exist because of DeviantArt. Browse at your own risk. There's a lot of things I wish I could unsee. The phrase, OC don't steal, comes from this site, meaning original character don't steal, which is funny because these OCs are often based in a universe the creators of these OCs don't own the IP rights to, so... But, yeah, that's where that comes from. The infamous, God, I wish that was me, screenshot comes from this site. I'll let you find out what that comment was on your own. Infamous webcomic Tales Gets Trolled, which I will inevitably review, hit subscribe, started out on this site. If you're unfamiliar with this comic, you are definitely familiar with the Tom and Jerry meme. It's from this. Sonic fans. Sonic fans are something else. Trust me, I know, I'm one of them, unfortunately. There is so much Sonic fan art on this site and so much NSFW Sonic fan art that this site is probably why Sonic fans are kind of looked down upon by the rest of the internet, more or less. Yeah, Sonic fans really are something else. Oh, there's also, bases. I'll leave a link to a video by YouTuber Izzy, once again, from New Zealand, in the description below for that one. And let's not forget about Country Humans, which will have its own entry later. Overall, DeviantArt is quite the bizarre website, although I think it's good if you want to browse artwork. Sites like ArtStation feel too hyper-homogenized with art styles, since on that site everyone's trying to find jobs in industry. With DeviantArt there's a variety of styles just on the front page, and I appreciate that. While I'm a fan of the uncensored and unfiltered approach, I'm just glad there's an option to filter out mature content on this site. The Genshin Impact community. Genshin Impact is an extremely successful gacha weeb game, I'm not too familiar with the genre because anything that has live service or daily objectives or surprise mechanics attached to them is not a game but a full-time job, and I got better things to do with my time, but the game is super successful. However, having said that, the fandom around Genshin Impact is full of some of the most talented and creative artists I've seen. The fan arts alone are some of the best fan arts I've seen. I know I'm always dropping a like on drawings of that witch chick. Now, what this entry is actually referring to is just how absolutely unhinged some people in this fandom can get. Specifically when it comes to things like lewd artworks of fictional characters that don't even exist. I don't want to get too into this because one mind can only take so much brain rot, but I'm pretty sure this is where the term anti comes from. But first we define shipping. So, a ship is when someone does a fan work where two, or more I guess, fictional characters become a couple or whatever, non-canon fan stuff, whatever, right? The people that do this are called shippers, and anti, to quote Urban Dictionary directly, is someone who is anti-shipping towards specific pairs, often to the point of harassing and or threatening shippers. They usually claim to only hate ships with pedophilic, incestuous, abusive, or otherwise problematic elements. However, many of them will do incredible mental gymnastics to call any ship that rivals their OTP problematic. One-time password? Oh, one true pairing. Okay. That's what that means. So, the Genshin Impact fandom is full of these antis. Side note, if you want to draw some fan arts or ships of my comic Doomsayer that are not canon, feel free, I don't care. But make sure you send them to me, because I want to see your fan art. You can read the comic via my website, absolutely free, link in the description. Boom, plugs, done. Okay. Anyway, this has gotten so bad that I personally will sometimes refuse to engage with an artist that draws Genshin fan art, no matter how good it is. So, just to piss off the Genshin community, let's play a game where I guess the age and sexuality of random Genshin characters. Oh, there's that witch chick I was talking about before. I see like a million fan arts of her. Mona, I think her name is? Anyway. Alright, here's a compilation here. Okay, let's see. I'm gonna assume... I think this is a trap. You guys remember trap? That word's a slur now, apparently. I don't know. I guess we say femboy now. I'm gonna say 13 and gay. Alright, let's see. I think this character is 17 and heterosexual. This one, alright, this looks like the this looks like a daddy character that all the girls on Tumblr would like make fan arts of. He's got that vibe to him, you know. Little tsundere looking. I'm gonna say 25. Yeah, and heterosexual. Oh, there's a lolly. 500 years old. Actually a dragon, right? Purple hair here. 15. I'm gonna say 15 and heterosexual. Alright, we got this one here. 22 and bi. Blue hair over here. I'm gonna go with 30. Yeah, 30. She's got that like MILF energy about her, you know? Let's see. And yeah, 30 and heterosexual. And this character, I'm gonna say 12. And I don't know. They look androgynous. Let's go with non-binary. I'm not sure. All right. Now, is everybody from the Genshin community angry? Good. Z fixes art and other racist art fixers. Okay, so this entry refers to controversial Twitter user Z Fixes Art and her rampant racist shenanigans. What this person did was take random people's art and altered the characters depicted within to be fat, black, and sometimes hairy. Now, I don't give a shit if you want to draw fat, hairy, black characters, but altering someone else's work and claiming you fixed it without their permission is just scummy. Now, there's a theory that this person was just an elaborate troll, but I don't know. I mean, have you seen people lately? Like, have you been on Twitter these days? Like, people are fucking crazy. You know, they're not doing so good. Z Fixes Art also decided to fix an artwork that someone had commissioned of themselves and blackwashed a real-life white person. Yeah, not cool, dude. Anyway, she's kind of disappeared since being called out by Muhammad Agbadi in one of his videos, which I will link in the description. There was also another infamous incident where an artist did human versions of Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles from the Sonic the Hedgehog series, and some user took it upon themselves to make the humanized version of Knuckles black. Now, I understand that Knuckles is a character that is often referred to as black-coded, whatever that means, and he was even voiced by Idris Elba in the live-action adaptation, but this is still another case of someone taking another creator's work, altering it, and proclaiming they fixed it, completely unsolicited. It seems art fixers have kind of faded away with the advent of AI because now AI bros are fixing real-life people. Yeah, like this Fallout one right here. Listen, fixing someone's artwork is one thing, but fixing real-life people with AI? That's fucked up, bro. Y'all AI bros need to get on that nofap or something. Colleen the Troll and her many controversies. Oh boy, this is a loaded one. Alright. So, Colleen is a troll masquerading as an art YouTuber. Her claim to fame was a shitpost about drawing juicy lips. However, this would not be what she would become known for. Remember when I mentioned the art roasters that rose to prominence in the aftermath of Ethan Becker's rise on YouTube? Colleen was one of them. While most people submitting to get roasted by Colleen understand that she's making edgy joke haha funny, others find her very mean-spirited. Well, as an enjoyer of dark, edgy humor, myself, you know, hey, my favorite YouTuber was Monkey Jones before he got his channel nuked. There's one thing about it. Dark jokes kind of have to land, because if they don't, you just look like an asshole. While I wouldn't consider Cooleen's brand of comedy as dark, it's certainly off-color, but just friendly enough to remain monetized. I mean, fair enough, you know? It's a struggle out here. One thing that started some controversy was a joke she made about telling her most likely quite young audience to only draw attractive people. Now, on one hand, I agree that if you want mainstream appeal, conventional attractiveness is probably your best bet, but, you know, drawing quote-unquote ugly people is fine too. I'm more or less of the mind, just let artists draw whatever the hell they want, unless they're Shadman, but some people were angry about this. One thing that some people noted about Cooleen's art is that she had a tendency to favor characters with light skin. There's the infamous Gorilla Jaw clip.
We're making this line is that we have to make sure that everything below the nose doesn't exceed this line. So the lips and the chin shouldn't exceed this line, no matter how juicy and big his lips are. Real, she looking kinda goofy, so let me give you some #valid criticism. As a general rule, just don't let the chin exceed the nose. Imagine that this is the skull, and this is where the eye should be, a bit closer to the side. It helps to draw a diagonal line like this to serve as a guide. And now I'm simply gonna liquefy, and then the eyebrows just copy paste, and there we go. Yassify before and after.
A lot of people are saying that because people of African descent have a tendency to sometimes have a similar bone structure, it was racist. There is also the edges incident. Before I show the clip, if you're unfamiliar, edges, sometimes referred to as baby hairs, are quote shorter hair situation at the hairline region at the perimeter of textured hair. It's a popular hairstyle amongst black and brown women. I'll put a few pictures on screen. You've probably seen this hairstyle before. Also, while doing research for this, just to get the definition right, I also found out some white women who do this call them sticky bangs, and I think that's so fucking funny. Here's what Cooleen said about a fan's drawing of a woman with edges.
What the heck is that? Why does she have 4 eyebrows? Bruh.
Yeah, not a good look. Anyway, she got cancelled. But Ethan Becker came in to save the day. And that was the end of that saga. Honestly, I think it was more ignorance than racism in my opinion, but only recently she did an oopsie. So for context, Jading Animations is a storytime animator vlogger. This genre of video is basically a narrator telling a story with an animation or animatic for visuals. The Odd Ones Out is probably the most popular creator in this genre, so Cooleen had the bright idea of yassifying their avatars. Which reminds me, I need to explain what yassifying means. Jesus fucking Christ, can't you damn kids speak English anymore? Is everything skibbity riz get L Ohio Kaisenat cooked? For fuck's sake, you sound like an R word. That R word. Not that R word, that R word. Anyway, directly from dictionary.com. Yassification is a noun from the verb yassify, which generally means to improve something, especially by making it more beautiful or glamorous. The word yassification often refers to a meme or online trend in which a person edits a picture of a person to look extremely feminine with a large amount of makeup. So that's what yassification is. Anyway, she grabbed these avatars and redesigned them. So she grabbed these avatars and did redesigns of them, except for Jaden Animations, she based it more off of her real self. So before we go further, a bit of background on Jaden. Jaden suffers from a condition called body dysmorphia. You know, a lot of people have it these days. If you're unfamiliar, more or less, it's a condition where no matter how much you physically change your body, your mental image sees yourself as worse than that. It's a horrible thing that a lot of people suffer with and should not be taken lightly. It was a huge thing for her when she did a face reveal video, and I think it's still her most popular video. I even saw it myself, and it was a good video. Back to Cooleen. So firstly, she called Jaden a quote-unquote goth mommy. That was when our audience knew that she fucked up. So, as a goth mommy enjoyer myself, the regulars know, but if you're new here, yes, I love aggressive goth women, okay? Here's a pro tip. Never actually call them goth mommies. Look, we like to have fun here, you know, when we talk about fictional characters that don't actually exist, but, you know, real people are real. Most people don't like to be called names, even if it's something that one would consider of a positive attribute, right? Okay, so the fact that Cooleen called Jaden this based off of what she looked like, considering her history, was very, well, tactless, to say the least. At the time of writing this, the whole Cooleen calls Jaden Animations a Goth Mommy saga seems to be in its falling action stage, but give it time, I guarantee Colleen fucks up again. I mean, she doesn't even need to be trolling like this anymore. She already got like 2 million subs. I don't get it. She doesn't have to make content like this anymore, but, you know, controversy gets clicks, I guess. Anyway, that was the last entry. Alright, and that concludes Tier 2 of the dark, weird, and controversial artist Iceberg. Okay, corrections to the previous tier. The phrase anti when it comes to fanships did not originate from the Genshin Impact community, however I feel like that's where it was popularized, and that's also where I came across it first. Hopeless Peaches goes by the pronouns he, him now, not she, her. Also for reference, Peaches apparently verbally abused an autistic and disabled person for several hours, and that's why he was cancelled very recently. It's a whole thing, and I'm gonna just walk away from that one. And one more thing, YouTuber Izziz is pronounced Izziz. I'm sorry, I like her content, and consider how much weirdo art stuff she covers, she'll probably get plugged again, so I'll get it right next time. Oh, and also, this one's of significant note, but to clarify, a Fujoshi is a woman that fetishizes gay men and homosexual relationships, not just a person who enjoys BL or boys' love stories. They're a little bit different, I guess. I'm still like, kind of like, whatever on that whole thing, you know? People are horny. Well, what are you gonna do? However, we'll be covering a reverse Fujoshi today. I also wanted to add this because I think it's a little funny. Sorry, I have a dark sense of humor, but apparently, according to this comment I'll put on screen, the main reason that Joe Cat left the internet was because someone sent him fetish art of his OC. Apparently, this chubby chaser was a racist, too.
Ugh, keep your fetish away from me!
Oh, and I also want to address a comment on the first tier about taxidermy. I'll put it on screen. I understand where this person is coming from, and maybe I should have articulated that entry a bit more and tried a bit more of an objective approach to it. It's just that I find art made out of dead animals just a bit odd is all. I mean, I still respect it as an art form, but I wouldn't do it myself, you know? Okay, hopefully when we get to Tier 4, we won't need this many corrections. Alright, onward to the next layer. Jazza vs. ZHC. Okay, this one has a lot of lore around it. ZHC is a horrible art YouTuber, but a really good Mr. Beast clone YouTuber. Jazza is a well-known and revered art YouTuber that I'm sure literally everyone watching right now is familiar with. If not, how? He's like one of the most subscribed to and longest running art YouTubers on the platform. So this entry is about a particularly interesting beef between these two. It's kind of an odd one, but one that I feel was a battle of good intentions, believe it or not. I know I covered a lot of art YouTuber drama last time, but this one is probably the last one in the entire Iceberg. So for context, let's start with ZHC. ZHC, or Zach, rose to prominence in the YouTube art community years ago and really got mainstream appeal when he started the customizing trend. Side note, I fucking hate the word customize. Just say you painted it, a-hole. Anyway, so his whole shtick was using extremely expensive art supplies and giving away a bunch of shit. You know, the Mr. Beast method if it was ever to be named. And yes, what works, fair enough. You know, I get it, you gotta hustle in this algorithm economy. However, the one thing that stood out in his shift to a Mr. Beastified art channel was just how disingenuous it felt. But you know, those big YouTubers that appeal to literal embryos, you know, are all disingenuous. To be perfectly honest, I don't hate the player, I just hate the game.
Oh my god, corny, lame, boo, tomato, I'm throwing tomatoes.
One of ZHC's major flaws was not properly crediting collaborators, some of which did the brunt of the work on various projects, not even a damn link in the description. Which, side note, all supplemental videos will be linked in the description. If you want a more in-depth look at these entries, I'll tell you which ones for this beef at the end of this segment, but moving on with the story, ZHC slowly morphed from an art YouTuber to a rich I must constantly show other people how much money I have type LA douche tuber. Serious Paul Brothers energy. So, Jazza decided to give the young man a stern talking to. Alright, here's where Jazza called ZHC out on this bullshit. Collaborators came forward, exposed that they weren't properly compensated, nor did they even get their channels linked in his descriptions at the very least, and, to top it all off, there were allegations of physical abuse of employees, and I don't mean being strict, I mean forcing people to do things that they physically weren't able to. For one of his videos, he forced a woman who has asthma to run a mile, and like, that's not cool, bro. Anyway, Jazza even had a call with ZHC about his bullshit. And honestly, Jazza is the last guy I think would get involved in something like this, so you know ZHC was in trouble. So ZHC did the bare minimum and added some links and altered some titles, you know. That's about it. ZHC is still making bad Mr. Beast clone content for embryos, and Jazza himself seems to be in a bit of a decline. Like, have you seen how bad his thumbnails are lately? Like, dude, you can't use a more interesting Canva template? Like, what is this? What is this right-wrong shit? Anyway, that's the beef, and probably the last one between art YouTubers, so now we're going to move on. But if you want a more detailed breakdown, I'll leave a link to a video by a YouTuber named Juni EO that breaks down the situation in under 10 minutes, as well as a link to Jazza's 2 ZHC videos. Andrew Dobson. Oh boy, this one is loaded. So Andrew Dobson is one of those guys that you could potentially make a documentary on, and one of my favorite newer YouTubers, MagicMush, did. Now, I'd say just go watch that, but I need to retain the viewer, so here's a general overview. Andrew Dobson is the definition of a soy boy, in short. He was so notorious that people that documented lol cows created the moniker Art Cow just for him. Alright, so let's start at the beginning. Fun fact, his name is actually Tom Preston, not Andrew Dobson. Why the change? I don't fucking know. Dobson was a raging Nintendo fanboy, the worst kind of fanboy. He also literally dressed like the Lightbringer. It's me, the Lightbringer. I'll link to that video of mine in the card. Anyway, this story is so extensive I actually reached out to the community to help me with an abridged version. While I don't mind longer format videos, and I'm assuming you don't either if you're watching this, it really is that deep. So here's the spark notes provided by viewer Uwu Edgelord. Great name. He got into a bunch of arguments online and made comics where he plays out his I should have said that scenario. He claimed anime made Disney go all CG and he couldn't get a job because of it. Something Treasure Planet, I think. I don't know. There's of course everyone's favorite, the infamous Power Girl incident. He was working a con, a cosplayer dressed up as Power Girl was taking a picture, and he was mad about it for some reason. So he proceeded to draw himself as his persona being a white knight for a scenario he made up in his head. This has since become an infamous meme. So, the big one is the fact that he's a raging male feminist. You know the type, Sarkeesian simps. He frequently made comics complaining about the sexualization of women and was an outspoken pro-LGBT activist. His Twitter was a sight to behold. Now, I don't really care all too much about a person's political beliefs, but it is relevant. He frequently drew lesbian couples more than gay men. Now, as I said in the previous tier, draw whatever the hell you want, unless you're Shadman. But when your antics online say, I'm super pro-LGBT, and you heavily favor drawing lesbian couples, you're probably going to get called out on it. Also, remember what I said about him being anti-sexualization of women a few sentences back? Yeah, kind of weird how he preached that while simultaneously drawing this stuff. Me? I don't give a fuck. I know quite a bit of art I've drawn is a bit degen to say the least, but the difference is that I own it. Dobson was a hypocrite about it. And just like Toby's story from the previous tier, it's not so much your fetishes or your secret degenerate artworks, it's the hypocrisy that most people have a problem with. His fetishization of lesbians is also where the lesbian kick image came from. And then there was the exposure of the secret account, Caddy N. Not only did he fetishize lesbians, but he was also really into inflation. This was the final nail in the coffin. Oh yeah, and I didn't even mention the Big Ben tracing fiasco.
Andrew Dobson, professional artist, traces pictures of Big Ben, goes to sell them at conventions. 5 minutes in Photoshop, I hope you die on your way to MCM. On your way to MCM.
This rabbit hole is deep, so I'd recommend that MagicMush video, and stay tuned to this channel when I take a look at Dobson's comics eventually. Race swaps. Oh boy, we're getting a little bit spicy on this one. Okay, so, race swaps refer to times when legacy characters inexplicably have their races changed, usually from white to black. There are many examples, but it seems the people that commit these race swaps favor ginger erasure. Now, I don't care about the races of characters in works of fiction, but after seeing how frequently it's done, you gotta ask why, you know? And to use a phrase I don't like using, it's most likely woke pandering, you know. They attempt to be diverse and inclusive. A lot of these people that work on reboots of older franchises have this dumb idea that they need to update for a modern audience, but when it bombs, they blame said audience, the audience that doesn't exist. Now, I'm of the mind that adding more diverse characters is totally fine, but why not create new characters to add instead of turning Bruce Wayne here into a gay Asian teenager? Well, a common defense I see is that, well, it won't sell as well if we created new characters, so we need to woke wash these legacy characters. Woke wash, for lack of a better phrase. Yeah, that's kind of bullshit. People just can't write. Let's see. The Wire is one of the greatest TV shows ever made. 90% black cast. I remember loving the Static Shock cartoon when I was younger. Samurai Jack was a banger. Japanese character right there for you. Oh, which reminds me, anime is insanely popular these days and often feature a 100% Japanese cast. Have you guys ever seen the anime classic Revolutionary Girl Utena? It's weird as hell, but I honestly call it a work of art. It's also very, very, very gay. Okay? But it's amazing. I love it. Spawn is one of the most successful and longest running creator-owned superhero comics ever. Alien and Aliens are still some of the most revered films ever, and for good reasons, and those movies have a literal strong female lead, as cringe as that phrase sounds these days. X-Men is a pretty good example of woke stuff being good, although in that case I believe the better phrase than woke is probably socially conscious. I know, Stanley didn't want to write origin stories, but he went on record to say that he saw what was going on with the civil rights movement and implemented an allegory. I literally got into the Soul Calibur franchise because when I was 13 in the local game crazy to pick up my birthday game, I just thought Zaslamel looked cool as hell on the cover. Yes, I am very old. So, no, you don't have to race swap legacy characters to add more diversity to your products. For the most part, just be a better writer. Take for instance the Velma Scooby-Doo reboot. People don't hate it because of the race swaps, they hate it because it sucks. Sentry did have a little bit of subjectivity to it, you know, I know it's a little bit of a controversial subject matter, but for the most part I think race swaps are completely unnecessary and just kind of done to, like, you know, pander, and be like, hey look, it's cool now, we changed the race or the gender or the sexuality, we're so woke, yeah. You know what I mean? Like, come on. I don't know. What do you guys think about race swaps? You know, do you like them? Do you hate them? Do you think people would be better off just creating new characters? I don't know. Let me know in the comments below. We're going to move on to the next entry. Outsider art. Outsider art generally refers to people creating art without any knowledge, background, or teachings in the traditional sense. Honestly, I just defer you to a documentary about it I found a while back if I can find it. Sorry, I can't remember the name offhand as I write this script, but maybe Editor John can put it on screen and link in the description. But I recall this documentary detailing people that were a bit, well, I guess neurodivergent is the best word? Yeah, I'd say autism, but some of these folks have more than autism. I will say I do think that documentary did have a tendency to focus on the more neurodivergent individuals and not just people that were self-taught, so do be prepared for a bit of bias if I can find the damn thing without remembering the name. There's a really good video by Atrocity Guide, who's an S-tier documentary style YouTuber by the way, where she goes in depth about this one outsider artist that built a kingdom out of garbage. It's called The Throne of James Hampton. It's a really unique piece. There's also another video from Fredrik Knudsen. I saw that one comment that corrected my pronunciation about this guy, Henry Darger, who drew a really long illustrated novel with like these transgendered angels or whatever. I don't know, it's kind of neat.
I just think they're neat.
Anyway, outsider art is an iceberg of its own, honestly. It might be a good topic for a potential future video series in this style. I will say though, this is an art channel and not an iceberg channel, but I'm not opposed to doing another one of these in the future. Gonna move along. Ancient alien nonsense. Ancient alien nonsense refers to the various conspiracies around many ancient artworks, particularly Egyptian artworks. The television show Ancient Aliens, which somehow has 20 fucking seasons, are you kidding me? This show popularized various theories the ancient civilizations were contacted by aliens and their artworks were evidence of that. Weirdly enough, it seems that only ancient civilizations inhabited by people with darker skin needed alien assistance to build things. Isn't that funny? Those aliens never stopped in Greece or Rome, apparently. Anyway, popular theorist and meme Giorgio A. Tsoukalos, what a name, is the reason people believe in this nonsense. Listen, if you look at ancient art from a long-ass time ago, people didn't understand stuff like perspective and light and shadow and all these fancy words we throw around in the art community today, but why? They were probably too busy growing crops and hunting food and trying to not fucking die. Not a lot of time left over to develop their art skills. As such, art they did make was probably not the Sistine fucking Chapel, you know? And misconstruing it as aliens is an eternal meme. Fun fact, when I was in school in one of my art history classes, the teacher showed an image of the stretched heads from Egypt, which most historians believe to be a bizarre and deadly fashion trend. Someone said, they look like aliens, as one would, and my teacher said, the A word is not allowed in here. Imagine being an art historian and constantly getting asked about ancient alien stuff. Anyway, this show was wacky, man, and the fact that it's still going 20 seasons later blows my mind. The Aaron Carter Incident. The Aaron Carter Incident refers to one particularly notable instance of art theft. Aaron Carter was a pop singer who rose to prominence as a child star with his hit song I Want Candy. As often the case with many child stars, his adult life wasn't so glitzy and glamorous. His star faded, but he was still around. To tell you the truth, I'm not a celebrity historian, so I don't know all of the details, but I do know of one thing that ties back to the art world. He stole a piece from artist Jonas whatever that is, to put on his clothing line, and when he was called out for it, he acted like a child about it. Carter got sued, and the artist won. Win for the artist. How about that, huh? We won one, boys. Not so good for Carter's last bit of notoriety before his passing. Aaron Carter unfortunately passed away due to taking Xanax and huffing a gas called difluorothane and passing out in his bathtub. It's honestly quite tragic. He was only 34. You know, even if he acted childish during his legal battle, it's kind of a shame, you know? Rest in peace. Corporate art style. Corporate art style refers to an art style that is frequently used in the corporate world. That sentence doesn't make sense. Okay, it's that flat, blobby characters with random colors for skin tones that you see in a lot of corpo shit. This art style is officially referred to as corporate Memphis or Algeria. I argue that the Grubhub Perks Make You Boogie meme from a few years back is an evolution of that style into 3D. There's a good video by Solar Sands on corporate art style. But that's not why this entry is on this iceberg, because in truth the style called corporate Memphis is actually Globo Homo. Let's get our tinfoil hats on. Globo Homo is short for globalized homogenization. There's some conspiracy theories around it that say stuff like eventually the global elites will make everything look like this dull, lifeless, blobby sleep aid of a style. Despite its pleasant colors, its ubiquity is comparable to a dystopian hellscape. One day your individuality will collapse under the omnipresence of Globo Homo. Or something like that. I don't fucking know. This is a shitty style that's in every single corporate thing ever these days. Anyway, this is the only time I'll ever tell you this, but this is a bad style and you shouldn't draw like it. John Wayne Gacy's art. John Wayne Gacy was one of America's most notorious serial killers, up there with the likes of Jeffrey Dahmer and the Zodiac Killer. One of his jobs was working as a clown, which earned him the serial killer nickname the Killer Clown. He was a disgusting excuse of a human being that R-worded and unalived, God I fucking hate YouTube, at least 33 young men in Chicago from 1976 to 1978. He was caught in December of 1978 and was sentenced to death in 1980 and put down via lethal injection in 1994. Now, you may realize he was jailed from 78 to 94, so other than standard prison stuff, what did he do with this time? Art, of course. He did a lot of human skulls and self-portraits in clown makeup. This painting on screen is probably his most famous one and even claimed to be haunted. Disgustingly enough, he was able to sell paintings while in prison, profiting off of them. Most likely the allure of it being tied to someone so infamous, which is probably why people buy Sonichu medallions. Don't do it, they're cursed. Anyway, these paintings were often very flat and lacked much in the lighting department. His style was very rudimentary and may even be considered Dadaist by how rough they were. A lot of his paintings sell for big bucks at auctions, but I believe that's the allure of a phenomenon called murderabilia, which, if you don't know, is defined as items related to horrific crimes and notorious killers that are auctioned off to weirdos that want to collect that stuff. Honestly, I just don't get it. Maybe you guys could tell me in the comments why someone would want to purchase this kind of thing. John Wayne Gacy was scum of the earth and was put down like the dog he was. His artwork is in the dark corner of the art world where we put things like Hitler paintings. While some may find the artwork aesthetically pleasing, the person who created it was so evil and horrific, most people don't even want to acknowledge it exists. If you want my thoughts on artworks by criminals, I'll link to an older video where I did exactly that. Loss. Loss refers to an infamous episode of a popular webcomic called Control-Alt-Delete. It's a silent chapter that depicts a man discovering his wife had a miscarriage. This is coming from a series that started out as a comedy gaming webcomic. I would go into more depth about this, but I have an entire series review of this infamous webcomic planned for the very next video, so make sure you subscribe. Lost has become one of those eternal memes up there with Doge and Pepe. It's always going to come back when you least expect it. The phrase, "is this Lost?" is often posted underneath any silent 4-panel comic because of just how much this particular episode permeated into the culture. Honestly, I'm quite interested to find how this came to be, but for now we're just going to move on to some weeb shit. Eroguro /90s anime OVAs. Eroguro nonsensu is a Japanese phrase meaning erotic grotesque nonsense. As the name implies, it has a heavy focus on graphic violence and erotic content. Its origins are cited around 1920s to 1930s Japanese culture, and its first mainstream breakout is credited to writer Edogawa Rampo. The reason I added 90s anime OVAs to this entry is the fact that some OVAs, which means original video animation, the Western equivalent probably being miniseries, were just rife with Eroguro content. Anime like Angel Cop, Wicked City, Ninja Scroll, and Legend of the Overfiend are notorious for their intensely graphic violence and explicit sexual content. Thus, these fall under the category of Eroguro. The art style is still prevalent to this day, but it seems like anime toned it down to appeal to a more modern mainstream audience, which is pretty lame in my opinion. Like, come on, where your balls at, bro? There are quite a few illustrators working in this style, including Toshio Saiki, Suehiro Maruro, and my personal favorite Eroguro artist, Shintaro Kago. Once you get past the shock value of this style, you can appreciate some of the works of the top artists in this genre, you know, not dissimilar to something like NSFW artists. Eroguro isn't a strictly Eastern style of illustration. All you need to do is punch in the term Eroguro into a Deviant Art search bar with the filter turned off, and you'll see shocking, graphically violent, and sexual artworks, although I wouldn't recommend it. Eroguro is often dismissed as edgelord shit, and sometimes, yeah, it is. But other times you can't help but appreciate the draftsmanship behind it. Oh boy, politics. Antunes. Remember what I said in the Jazza vs. ZHC entry that it was the last art YouTuber drama? Well, I guess I lied. Okay, so where do I even start with this guy? Ugh. This might be the longest entry on the Iceberg and will probably have the most comments with corrections in it. I look forward to getting a full picture from people that are a little bit more entrenched in the art commentary / storytime animator communities. Alright, but based on my research, here's a general overview of Antunes and his notable conflicts. Okay, so this guy is an animator and comic creator known for darker humor and conservative-leaning politics. As stated in the Dobson entry, I could care less about a person's political beliefs, but having said that, some of his comics might be seen as just a bit much. Whether you agree with them or not, I don't know. You guys tell me in the comments below. Now, his politics are not actually why he's on this list. Again, I don't care about that, and neither should you. The thing is that he's gotten into so many dumbass Twitter fights that researching this felt like an exercise in futility. A bottomless pit, if you will. It seems he toned it down these days, but his behavior is archived for all to see. The internet is forever. So, here's the highlights. Daft Pina, who was a bit of a rabbit hole himself, called him out on tracing some frames of his animations. Antunes admitted to it, and it was a whole thing, but that's pretty minor compared to the other stuff on this list. Puppy-chan is a whole other rabbit hole as well, and will be included in the bonus tier. Man, this community's a fucking disaster. Okay, they had some dispute. Puppy-chan was a minor. Antunes drew messed up drawings of her avatar or something. This is making my brain hurt. It was a whole thing. There was, I think they made up, but then, whatever. Aziz from New Zealand, see, I knew she was going to come up again, and I got it right this time, was the victim of false allegations perpetuated from Antunes. Which allegations? That she was a map. No, not that thing you look at to find out where you are. It's an acronym for a person with Biden energy. This was objectively false, and she even made a video debunking this. However, based on research on this beef, it seems she actually made the same false allegations about Antunes. What a mess. It seems they reconciled and just walked away after this chapter in the Antunes saga. I don't know, it's a whole thing. Look, there's so much more to various controversies of Antunes and his many disputes and Twitter fights. Honestly, I'm just kind of giving up on this entry because for everything I see against Antunes, I see something for Antunes. I just recommend typing Antunes drama into the search bar and watching all of the videos around it and formulating your own opinions. This is why, other than doing postmortems on certain dramas in this very Iceberg, which is the first and only time I'm doing it, I don't get involved in stuff like this. While I like to read a good old-fashioned Twitter fight, I do not engage, and neither should you. It's a waste of time that could be used for something more productive. Now, to be fair, some of Antoon's detractors did go after him because he's right-leaning and they were left-leaning, and I tried to sidestep politics mostly. Whether you're left-wing or right-wing, all that matters to me is chicken wings. Okay, believe in what you want, but try to hear out both sides on a matter and formulate your own opinions so you don't go off the deep end of either side. Not everything is so black and white when it comes to political issues. This entry made me lose brain cells, and to be honest, I'm glad I'm moving on from it. I'm sure this segment will be deemed controversial, I guess, so let's move on to something more advertiser-friendly. Racist cartoons. Oh, god damn it. Oh boy, alright, this tier is definitely checking off the controversial in the title of this series. Racist cartoons refer to old cartoons that were objectively racist. There are, of course, the infamous Censored 11. Cartoons that have been banned and sealed away for just how goddamn racist they are. Here's a list with a brief synopsis of each, more or less. Hitting the Trail to Hallelujah Land contains blackface and Uncle Tom's. Sunday Go to Meeting Time contains racial stereotypes. I mean, just look at it. Clean Pastures is another case of just look at it. Uncle Tom's Bungalow, I mean, that's the title, need I say more? Jungle Jitters is yet another case of just look at it. Honestly, these are all really a case of just look at it as I research this topic further, but the rest of the list is as follows. The Isle of Pingo Pongo, All This in Rabbit Stew, Coal Black and the Seven Dwarfs, Jesus Christ, okay, Tin Pan Alley Cats, Angel Puss, and Goldilocks and the Jiving Bear. These cartoons were so blatantly offensive and racist that they were banned in the 60s. The 60s. There's also Song of the South, which was actually an Oscar-winning film that was very, not cool to say the least. I mean, funnily enough, one of Disney's most famous songs, Zippity Doo Dah, is from this film. This film was released in the 40s. There is some debate around whether or not the film is actually racist. It's deemed to depict stereotypes of African American people, although many comments I've read on clips of it seem to not find the film as racist as its legacy preceding it. Look, I don't really know. Feel free to debate about it in the comments, but please keep it civil and respectful. The film has since never been released on home media. Those Censored 11, though, those are objectively more racist than a Klan meeting. It was a different time, but these are still some of the most notoriously racist animations ever made. Luckily, there has been progress since, but unfortunately, racism of all kinds is alive and well these days. If you want a more in-depth look at the Censored 11, I'd recommend a video by El Supersonic Q on it. And that concludes Tier 3 of the dark, weird, and controversial artist Iceberg. Okay, so no real corrections to go over this time, but we got an addendum to Antoons and his shenanigans. Basically, there was a whole thing between him and Puppy Chan, and he created an animation of... Well, let's just save that for Puppy Chan's own entry in the bonus tier. We'll also be talking about something similar when we get to Vanessa Teagues in one of the later tiers. Also, a lot of people can't come to a consensus about the word Fujoshi. Some commenters said that it's the Westerners that altered the word to be an F word I can't say this early in the video. Not that F word. Yeah, that F word. Oh, and apparently Ancient Aliens man's name is pronounced Giorgio P. Sucrlos. Pretty sweet name. And one last thing, it may appear that I'm going out of order here, but it's just a matter of certain entries needing certain words that can't be said something like 2 minutes, I think it is, at least, into the video. Trust me, we will get to everything here. Without further ado, onward to Tier 4. Art lore. So, art lore is a trend that started on TikTok. You'd think with that title it'd be people sharing their origin stories on how they became an artist and sharing their journey to improve their craft over the years, right? Wrong. So, art lore is a phrase that actually doesn't make sense when you look into it. Lore is defined as, quote, a body of traditions and knowledge on a subject or held by a particular group, typically passed from person to person by word of mouth. So, you'd think my initial assumptions would be correct, but they're not. So, art lore actually refers to a trend on TikTok regarding allegedly problematic artwork. Good lord, I hate that word, problematic. Listen, if you think someone's art is problematic, you better have a damn good reason. Like the cases of Shadman or Cooleen's Jaden Animations drawing. Those at least do have some legitimate lore around them and are, in my opinion, somewhat justifiable as the dreaded word problematic. However, sometimes there's art that's meant to be provocative or shocking, like NSFW art or Erogora, which I talked about last time. That art can be seen as problematic to the terminally online crowd that thinks all art is political, aka morons. Now, the trend on TikTok devolved into straight up bullying of beginner artists, and since TikTok's user base is quite young, may have dissuaded newer artists from pursuing the craft. Now listen, I don't use TikTok. I'm too old for that shit. Doing this general overview, which by the way, these entries are just general overviews to give you an idea of what they are, not deep dives, so don't expect extremely long breakdowns, okay? I saw that one comment. Doing this general overview and researching it kinda killed some brain cells, because it's from TikTok, and if you use TikTok, you're gonna have a bad time. Now, I could expand the research into this and point out specific examples, but I do want you to be aware that some people use the phrase art lore to gaslight beginner artists into quitting, and that's not cool. Every artist is on their own unique artistic journey and should be able to draw whatever they damn well please, problematic or otherwise. But also don't be a dick. It's really not that hard, okay? Remember, you don't got anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. Sorry, I'm losing enthusiasm in my scripting for this segment, but the long and short of it, art lore is code for assholes on the internet that bully beginner artists or think all art is political. It's really dumb and the trend has seemed to die down from what I've seen, but again, I don't use TikTok and neither should you. The Arch Enemy Photographer Incident. This one's for my metalheads. The Arch Enemy Photographer Incident refers to a conflict between death metal band Arch Enemy and their photographer at the time, Jay Salmarin, in 2018. Well, specifically Arch Enemy's manager and former vocalist Angela Gogh. She's the antagonist in this story, and Arch Enemy, if you will.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
So first things first, Jay Salmarin is not just a photographer, but also an attorney. I'm guessing shooting photos for bands is just his side gig. Anyway, he was shooting photos for the band at one of their gigs and everything was fine. He shared some photos, so did the band, and so did a clothing brand called Thunderball Clothing. Now, this post was an ad. Thunderball Clothing sponsor Alyssa White Glues, the band's vocalist. They took the photo that Jay Salmarin shot and used it as an ad without getting him to sign off on it. Now this is not transformative content and it's not protected under fair use. The image was used for commercial purposes without being licensed. Listen, when I do a technique in my artwork called photo bashing, I use a website called Pexel specifically to get royalty-free stock images so there's no potential of being sued later. If you don't pay a license for an image you don't own the copyright to, you generally can't use it for commercial purposes. There's the argument for fair use, like in this very video where I'm using videos and images in a transformative sense for the purpose of documentation, satire, or criticism. So Jay Salmarin basically just sent Thunderball Clothing a cease and desist, but then the story takes a turn. So get this, Thunderball said that Arch Enemy had the right to use his photographs and that he should back off. These motherfuckers actually said to a professional photographer that shot a ton of bands that he should be, quote, happy for the exposure. And listen, if anyone wants to pay you an exposure, straight up just tell them to fuck off. Okay? Sorry for being crass, but too many artists still fall into this trap. Exposure is a bullshit word for people wanting you to work for free, and that's no good.
That's no good.
Anyway, it turns out the person that Jay Salmarin was talking to was the band's manager, Angela Gogh. She henceforth banned him from... henceforth? Did I really write fucking henceforth? Alright, we'll go with it. She henceforth banned him from attending Arch Enemy shows and took the photo down. Thunderball Clothing shut down soon after, by the way. Believe it or not, part of her emails to Salmarin included the phrase, quote, threatening correspondents to monetize on their images. God forbid artists don't want people to steal their work and actually get paid. Anyway, this is basically an illegal use of a copyrighted image case, and to be honest, it's a whole thing. If you want more information on this whole fiasco, the photographer himself made a video about it. I will link it in the description. Side note, they peaked at Wages of Sin. Vivzy Pop. Vivzy fucking Pop. Vivian Medrano, better known as Vivzy Pop, is a popular animator here on YouTube. She's an animator, writer, director, producer, and voice actress. She's even created 2 animated series, Has Been Hotel and Hell of a Boss. Impressive resume, quite skilled. Now there's one skill in her repertoire that needs refining, basic training even, hell, introductory lessons, and that's her writing. She's become notorious for her bad writing. I'll admit, she's very talented. Her animation, art skills, even direction and everything is nothing to scoff at. But holy shit, her writing is atrocious. It's become so infamous there are even memes about it. Type in if it was written by Vivzy Pop in your search box and see what you find. But only after you watch the rest of this video. Subscribe to my channel, leave a comment, and like and watch all of my other videos. over and over again. Do it now.
Peter, what the fuck are you doing?
Gay sex.
What the fuck? Hey, at least I'm not...
Have sex with children and kill them.
Yeah, this isn't exactly a good fucking substitute. Where'd you get...
Sex with her at the Marriott.
From Donald Trump? What?
Yeah, right behind Donald Trump's hardware store. There's a fuck face selling it.
So imagine if I fucking scripted the fucking rest of this fucking video where I have a fucking requirement to say fuck every 5 fucking seconds. Jesus Christ. Yeah, not so good, yeah? Also, I think I just got demonetized, so smash like and subscribe. Also, sex jokes can work on occasion, but no one likes that guy that makes literally everything sexual.
Sex. I'll have sex with you if you have sex with me. Well, sex, sexual reproduction, sex hotels.
So yeah, not the best writer, but as I researched this entry, since I only have surface level knowledge of this person beforehand, I encountered a rabbit hole. So we gotta talk a little bit about politics. So she made some fan art of political commentators Shuan Head and Blair White. Blair White, who apparently did blackface at one point, which I was not aware of before researching this. I thought she was just a right-wing commentator, but apparently she did blackface. Or maybe it's just like a facial cream, like those students that got kicked out of their school by trying to get rid of their acne. You guys see that whole story? That was a whole other thing. I'm getting sidetracked. But anyway, I actually used the shoe on head clip in one of the earlier entries. I'm like, whatever on these political YouTubers. I like to watch the left and the right, you know. But yeah, that's a whole thing. She apologized for the fan art for some reason, which, I mean, like, don't ever fucking apologize for fan art, okay? There's also some of her animators claiming toxic work environments and low pay. Unfortunately, a lot of animation studios have that problem. Animators are like criminally underpaid, like everywhere. It's disgusting. They deserve to get paid more, but that's a topic for another time. I'm going a little bit off script here. There was the referencing of someone else's art and not giving credit. Like, look, man, after looking into this, it seems Vivzy Pop is an unfortunate victim of surrounding herself with an audience of terminally online political weirdos. There are some instances where she might appear to be in the wrong, but every controversy, as there are many I've come across, are literal nothing burgers. I think her biggest sin is how atrocious her writing is. We'd be here all day and all night and all of tomorrow if we went over every single little thing. There's her not being able to handle criticism so well too, but honestly the solution is just deleting Twitter, or X, or whatever the hell you call it. When I started down this rabbit hole, I thought there'd be so much more, but it really is just a bunch of terminally online psychos being terminally online psychos. Same kind of thing that happened to Joe Cat. You gotta be careful about who you're building up as your audience. You know, it's like one minor detail of something she said years ago and suddenly she's a word that ends with isterphobe. It's all bullshit. Go touch grass. I know there's way more to this whole story, like way more, but it's just not interesting. If you want a full breakdown of her nothing controversies, there's a pretty good video by YouTuber A. Lamau. Yes, that's his name. Linked in the description. Moving along. Patreon's double standard on NSFW art. Correction. This entry should really be titled Patreon's flip-floppy policy on NSFW art. Patreon. A good site to directly support creators you like, especially artists. It's great for artists. Now, what if your specialty is NSFW art? Well, maybe Patreon might not be the best venue, despite them explicitly stating it was okay. This is a whole thing. Let's start at the beginning as always. So, Patreon allows NSFW artwork, right? As long as the creator and patrons verify their age, it's fine. Or is it? They've been extremely wishy-washy with their policies around not safe for work content, especially in recent times. Some of the biggest names in the art sphere of Patreon are NSFW artists, and you'd think Patreon would want to keep it that way. Think about how much money they're making. However, they keep altering their policies to the point of it, in my opinion, for spicy artists to not even bother. Now, they banned some creators that draw spicy stuff with an anime art style because the characters depicted were never explicitly stated to be 18+, and mods interpreted them as younger than that. Even though they weren't, it's a lot to go through, and to be honest, I don't want to bother. This entry in particular really is just a surface level overview. I don't want to dig through this stuff and find stuff I really don't want to see, you know what I'm saying? There's also the recent addition of explicit consent in your work, whether you're making a work of fiction or not. This is also where payment processors come in, and I have to kind of side a bit with Patreon here. Obviously, I don't condone non-con or snuggle struggle or whatever word that thing that I have to disrespectfully cover it up with. That's the word that's okay these days. I think that was a run-on sentence, but I think I know what you mean. I don't condone that stuff. That's no good.
That's no good.
The thing is, I've seen cases of Patreon okaying child models on their website as long as the page is run by parents. Look, man, I'm just gonna say it. That toddlers and tiaras stuff is absolutely repulsive, and I do not condone it, and think it should be outlawed, honestly. Bit of a radical take, but there are some things that are just wrong in principle. And if you don't think the people paying for that content are in PDF files, well, try some critical thinking for once. Look, on one hand, I understand that some regulations need to be put into place for this type of content. Obviously, you don't want anything illegal on your site. On the other hand, interpretations of content that's explicitly created for adults and adults only may have some human error or biases in them. NSFW art is extremely profitable for Patreon, which is most likely why they haven't outright banned it, and it's hard to moderate considering how many creators use their platform. So I can kinda understand both parties here, the NSFW artists that may be having their works misinterpreted, but also Patreon who needs to keep their business afloat by banning certain content to keep the payment processors happy. You can actually read through the TOS and read about all the depraved shit they had to purge from their platform. Imagine being the guy who wrote this up and having to write, quote, "permitted or animated depictions of sexual activities between anthropomorphic characters such as furries." That's one rough day at the office. This situation is messy to say the least. If you want to draw spicy art, nothing against spicy artists, I'd recommend OF. Yes, there are actual artists on OF, not just adult stars. Anyway, questions for the comments. Would you guys support me on Patreon? I've toyed with the idea, but never really committed. Moving on. Performance art. Performance art definitely fills in the weird in the title of this series. So as the name implies, performance art is art expressed through performance. Duh. Based on my research, the emergence of performance art is accredited as an offshoot of the Dadaist movement led by artist Tristan Tzara. Dadaism is that childlike and abstract art you'd see emerge around the turn of the century, accredited to artists like Marcel Duchamp, the world's first shit poster, and Hannah Hawk, who invented the photo montage, often incorrectly referred to as a collage. So yeah, in short, it's a bunch of weirdo artists being weirdo artists. This entry can be an iceberg of its own, honestly, and might actually make for a good sequel. But before that, I should share some performance art pieces that might intrigue you, dear viewer. I mean, everyone knows about the Yoko Ono one. Yeah, I have no context for that one, nor do I feel a need to provide you with one. There's this one where artist Mona Hatoum walked barefoot through Brixton with her ankles tied to a pair of Doc Martens to say the government's always watching you or whatever. A bit much if you ask me. I mean, the government is always watching you, and this would be a perfect spot for a VPN sponsor, but we gotta pump those numbers up, so hit the subscribe button. Jokes aside, there's also my favorite one, Kim Bao's performance of using yellow only, and with each stroke of this paintbrush, he added an anguished scream of misery. And as a certified yellow hater myself, I find this extremely based. There's been a more recent one that you may have come across if you watch any of those horror/internet mystery YouTubers, and that's Sitting and Smiling. This guy live streams himself sitting and smiling, as the name implies, for like 4 hours, and that's it. That's all he does. As of writing this script, I'm not sure if he still does it, but he's got to be up in the hundreds of streams by now. He's so dedicated to his craft that he's even peed himself once and actually ignored a burglar who tried to get his attention.
Hello?
Imagine being the robber to find this guy doing this and have him not respond at all. I think the burglar was more scared of him than he was of the burglar. Now, I can't talk about performance art without bringing up most likely the biggest name in the genre, Marina Abramovich. Oh my god, this is an enormous topic to cover. YouTuber Blind Dweller made a docu-series about her, so if you want the full story, just watch that, link in the description. But there is one particular infamous piece of performance art she created, Rhythm Zero. In Rhythm Zero, Abramovich laid out 72 items, including scissors and a gun, and let the audience do whatever they wanted to her over the course of 6 hours. The performance was actually cut short when the crowd got too aggressive, doing things like cutting into her skin and tearing her clothes. It stands as one of the darkest entries in the history of performance art. I'm not so sure what the point of the piece was, but I do think it's to expose the proclivity of human nature to descend into depravity when no order at all is present, but that's just my thoughts. I came across a quote by an art critic, Thomas McEvely, who witnessed the performance that sums it up pretty succinctly. Quote, "It began tamely. Someone turned her around. Someone thrust her arms into the air. Someone touched her somewhat intimately. The Neapolitan night began to heat up. In the 3rd hour, all her clothes were cut from her with razor-sharp blades. In the 4th hour, the same blades began to explore her skin. Her throat was slashed so someone could suck her blood. Various minor sexual assaults were carried out on her body. She was so committed to the piece that she would not have resisted rape or murder. Faced with her abdication of will, with its implied collapse of human psychology, a protective group began to define itself in the audience. When a loaded gun was thrust to Marina's head, and her own fingers was being worked around the trigger, a fight broke out between the audience factions." Yeah, so that was Rhythm Zero. Hell of a show, to say the least. Performance art is still practiced today, and some people might write it off as weirdo artist cringe, which, let's be honest, sometimes it is. However, there are times when there's something more to be said about it. Pepe the Frog. Pepe the Frog refers to that meme frog you've probably seen everywhere. Now, you might think this is just some funny cartoon frog, but the lore goes deep on this one. A quick Google search and the first result is a link to the Anti-Defamation League. If you're unfamiliar, the Anti-Defamation League, or ADL, is a Jewish non-governmental and advocacy group. The long and short of it is that they fight against anti-Semitism. However, they've been under fire in recent years for calling the most mundane and non-confrontational things anti-Semitic, when in actuality, sometimes it's just a phrase that Christians use, like Christ is King, which is a whole other rabbit hole that I'm just gonna walk right away from, not touching that one, or a literal cartoon frog. Oh, not to mention edgelord edits of the McDonald's Mac Tonight character. Go watch Lemon's video for that one. But now, you may be thinking, how does a cartoon frog end up on a list of symbols of hate? Well, let's start at the beginning. Pepe the Frog is a cartoon character created by Matt Furry or Fury, not sure how to pronounce that, in his comic Boys Club. Over time, Pepe became an internet meme, mostly referred to as that sad frog or something along those lines. Feels good, man, I think is his catchphrase. But then the 2016 American election happened. Oh boy, we gotta talk about politics again. Jesus Christ. So around the time of the 2016 election, there were some groups of people that did edits of Pepe the Frog memes that depicted him in a not so great way, to say the least. There was also the instance of President Trump posting a funny edit of himself in a Pepe the Frog skin, which, come on, you think he knew that these obscure hate groups doing edits of the frog existed? Like, come on. Probably not, if you try to look at things objectively, regardless of your opinions of the controversial president. You know, I don't think a man like in his 70s is really plugged into meme culture. Now, of course, left-wing biased news organizations scrambled to bash Trump, and then it broke into mainstream media that hate groups were doing edits of the frog. You need to understand that every news organization is biased, whether they say so or not, and should always be cross-referenced with the opposing side. There's a reason more Americans believe in Bigfoot than journalists. Anyway, edgelords took the opportunity to make more edits, and eventually the ADL declared it anti-Semitic, and some hate groups legitimately did claim it. Matt Furries has since denounced the theft of his character to push extremist views. Now, most rational thinking people would agree that it's just a cartoon frog, there's some edgy boys making edgy posts, and there are a lot of morons involved in it. The morons that legitimately use Pepe as a hate symbol, and the morons that think an edgy cartoon frog is a hate symbol. The whole thing is a Moonman / Mac Tonight situation all over again. Seriously, go watch that Lemon video. But after this one. And after hitting the subscribe button. The only difference is because of the time that this whole fiasco happened, it became a very heavily politicized thing. Once again, since politics are coming up so frequently in this tier, unfortunately, I don't care about your affiliation, but I do believe you shouldn't just believe everything you're told. Look into things and research them from every angle before coming to a conclusion. Not everything is so black and white. Luckily, next tier we're looking at some more gross outs rather than some rage bait. Yeah, make sure you don't eat for the next tier, but this one's fine. Alright? I know some people need a YouTube video to eat. Fair enough, I get it. Politics were invented to make stupid people feel smart, okay? Don't be a midwit is what I'm saying. Anti-Semitism, racism, extremism, all these radical things are very real, and as sane people, hopefully my audience as well, we do not condone these things, okay? However, there are some people who are terminally online that will find fault in anything, which we discussed in the Vivzy Pop entry prior. They will seek out things that aren't there and find them one way or another, and there are morons that will adopt things that don't belong to them to push extremist rhetoric as well, pushing one narrative or another. Picasso. Picasso is an Australian artist most known for his chosen method of applying paint to canvas. What is it? Well, he paints with his... That's it. Just wanted to share this with you because it's a matter of I shouldn't be the only one to suffer knowing this information. You know, one of those. So, yeah. That's Picasso. He's checking off the weird in this title. There's not much more to it. I think his pieces are actually pretty solid, you know. Pretty decent works. Nothing I personally hang on the wall. I mean, who knows how bad his balls smell. Anyway, we're going to move on. Adam Ellis. Adam Ellis is cringe. Next entry. Jazza's brother. Okay, no. Let me tell you about BuzzFeed in cringy comic form, Adam Ellis. So, Adam Ellis is a comic artist with the Democrat Party's phallus surgically attached to the inside of his mouth. He rose to prominence with his Dear David ARG Twitter thread documented a haunted apartment. That's all well and good, but that's not why he's on this iceberg. So he worked for BuzzFeed as a comic artist, and a lot of his comics are cringier than a page of Sonichu. Some of these comics are utterly inoffensive and might make people that think Saturday Night Live was ever funny giggle, but some of these are just cringe. It ain't even the fact that they're politically charged. Again, don't care about your politics, just stop being cringe about it, man. Believe it or not, he's responsible for the let people enjoy things meme, which is insanely ironic because he's the type to have a hissy fit if there isn't enough representation, diversity, and inclusion in some mass-produced soy boys Disney Marvel slot. Sorry, but people who actually have taste are sick of that stuff. It's time to move on, Hollywood. There are certain groups of people he obviously has immense spite for, and it's very apparent. And you might be thinking, oh, John's a rightoid and he doesn't get it. Guys, stay tuned. We will get to Stone Toss. Two wrongs don't make a right. Also came across a potential instance of plagiarism while researching this guy, and there was the recent Stellar Blade incident. Okay. Let me summarize this as fast as possible, and I'm leaving a lot too. It's a whole fucking thing. Alright, short version, the devs of the game said there'd be no censorship for this game because Sony's been known to censor the hell out of their games these days, and they ended up altering one of the characters' outfits after the game came out. So, they also censored some of the blood and gore, by the way, which a lot of people haven't mentioned. They did censor that too, in an M-rated game. Adam Ellis made a super cringe dumb comic, and everyone disliked that. Look, man, Adam Ellis is just BuzzFeed cringe, and we're gonna move on. He's really not that important. I don't even know why I put him on the iceberg. Let's get back to another cringe man. Jazza's brother. Longtime fans were waiting for this one. Jazza's brother refers to Shad Brooks, also known as Shadiversity here on YouTube. He's known for his in-depth analysis on medieval combat and weaponry, and was once well-liked and revered in the nerdy castles and swords and medieval history genre of YouTube videos. But that's not why he's on this iceberg. Shad, whose brother is Jazza, probably the most famous art YouTuber, made a video one day. And man, sometimes a creator will make a video and they think they're cooking but serve you a raw pile of bullshit. The video in question was, of course, a love letter to AI art. So, Shad did a video breaking down his process of integrating AI into his art workflow. He proclaimed that AI enhanced his drawings when in actuality it completely destroyed any concept of artistry and style and spat out shiny, hyper-realistic, homogenized garbage. Look at it for yourself, you'd be inclined to agree. This video was the start of what seems to be a nosedive in his career as a YouTuber. A lot of artists had a lot to say about this, as well as some unbearable smug post he made on Twitter, myself included. Jazz's brother is a bit of a meme on this channel now. Now, the major criticism of AI are three things. One, these images can be used to generate anything, from extremist propaganda to illegal pornography. A serious problem, and one that should have more people concerned. You can usually tell when it's AI, but sometimes you can't. 2. These AI models are trained on images that the creators of these databases do not have the copyrights to. That's why when the AI art boom from a little while back happened, you saw a weird amalgamation of signatures in a lot of them. And 3, the one that Shad is guilty of, AI art bros are extremely pretentious snobs with superiority complexes that think they're fucking Michelangelo because they AI generated hentai with weird proportions. I will literally insert part of my dramatic reading of one of Jazza's brother's tweets here to show you what I mean. But I'm very happy with the results. Now, I'm not saying that this image is flawless, not at all. Indeed, I think if a more talented artist knew how to use AI tools, they could make a far better AI image than me, because that's the key. Making the best and most complex and specific AI art requires artistic ability. That's a run-on sentence, bro. So my next project will be to test new themes, specifically subtlety, combat with another sword-wielding opponent. I'm looking forward to the challenge. Okay. Well, since you gassed it up so much, let's take a look at the AI image. Yeah. So there's also that one infamous clip of Jazza's brother telling Jazza that his work is on a professional level and Jazza being the nicest guy about it.
When does the dressing you do is good? Easily at a professional standard. Yes. People have commissioned me. It's just I haven't chosen to use it.
Can I say that there are a lot of people who are at a professional standard who can't work as an artist.
Yeah, but we're talking about skill, not, wanting to work.
Yeah, I know, but like...
Joss, you need to be very honest.
If I'm going to be very honest, I love you. I'd say appoint an artist.
Well, no, because then you should get appointed artist. We have our strengths and weaknesses, and you know what my strengths are in artistry, and I'm easily at a professional standard.
I would be willing to give you 2 points in writer. I'll put it that way.
Art easily is on 2 points. I'm at a professional standard, and you know that.
You respectfully disagree.
Your strengths are expression, expression and colour.
We don't need.
But my strengths are anatomy and character.
Absolutely, you're a skilled artist. That's good.
Now, there's also been some decline in Shad's content aside from the AI travesty. Oh, should also note he made an entire dedicated channel to his AI art, but that's for another time maybe. There was also some controversy when regular viewers discovered he had a channel called Night's Watch with political commentary with conservative leanings. Now, I don't care about that, and neither should you. Politics are politics. Whatever, man. Believe in what you want. But some of his more liberal-leaning viewers were angry about it. There's also been a general decline in his content to the point that he even made a YouTube is killing my channel, mate video, and yeah. No, Shad. Your content just hasn't been as good as it was in the past, and the AI video really rubbed people the wrong way. Now, to be perfectly honest, I don't think Shad's a bad guy or anything. Honestly, I like Shad, but I just really have a problem with his stance on AI, as do many artists. There's also his book that has a lot of R-word in it based on reviews I've seen. I mean, I haven't read it myself, so I can't fully corroborate this, but a lot of the reviews say, like, whoa, there's a lot of R-word in this book. You know which R-word I'm talking about. But that's for another time. And he was in a big feud with another medieval nerd channel that happened a while back. These shenanigans are what's killing his channel. But referring to him as Jazza's brother will be an eternal meme on this channel. This is definitely the last time I talk about Shad on the channel forever. Maybe. Moving on. Christ and Piss / Virgin Mary and Poo. This entry refers to 2 controversial art pieces that were created with the intent to offend Christians. Just some cringelord artists being cringelords. You know, really safe, edgy energy. Anyway, the first one, Christ and Piss, refers to an art piece of a crucifix submerged in urine. Real edgy, bro. This was created by artist Andre Serrano. His intent was to criticize the commercialization of religious symbols, not to commit blasphemy and say some cringe shit like, Lamau, Christian's bad, I'm so edgy, my favorite game is Shadow the Hedgehog. Sorry I'm taking the piss out of this one, pun intended, but come on. It was intended to offend, and it did, and it's honestly kind of a cool looking photo. Like, the photo actually looks pretty cool. Very red. Might want to get that checked out. Anyway, the other piece, which I'm gonna have to censor, Chris O'Feely's The Holy Virgin Mary is a painting made with elephant dung. When the piece was revealed in 1999, New York Mayor at the time, Rudy Giuliani, was hypercritical of it, calling it, quote, sick stuff. Funnily enough, he'd have shit painting his head a number of years later. Like, dude, what hair is there to dye anymore? Why, bro? Like, what the fuck? He actually threatened to stop funding the Brooklyn Museum, which displayed it at the time. Didn't work, though. The painting was actually vandalized at one point, like those insufferable climate people, except this was a cringe protest coming from the other side of the political aisle. Don't vandalize paintings, dude. Like, nobody cares, man. Just let people enjoy art regardless of the political connotations, man. Jokes aside, O'Feely said elephant dung was beautiful or something. Who cares? He was obviously just trying to get a rise out of people, like Marcel Duchamp's infamous first shitpost, except this one really was a shitpost. Edgelord shit, you know. And it sold for $4.5 million. You are literally putting shit on your wall, dude. Anyway, some real edgy shit, but let's take a look at something even more edgy. Depictions of the Prophet Muhammad. Muhammad is the prophet of the religion of Islam. Much like other religious figures like Jesus Christ, there were some edgelord artists that made funny drawings of him. Now, personally, for this entry, I'm actually not going to show any art of him. And you might be thinking, why bend the knee, bro? I actually think it might go against YouTube's TOS and be qualified as a hate crime. Personally, that clarification of crime is kind of dumb. Most crimes are hateful, but that's besides the point. I also spelled it wrong, apparently. It's spelled M-U-H-A-M-M-A-D, apparently. Sorry about that. So, I'm not familiar with Islam, but based on my research in the Quran, which is the holy text of the religion, it's not actually explicitly stated that visual depictions are prohibited. So, once again, I'm not super familiar with Islam, but two major sects seem to be Sunni and Shia. It appears that Sunni prohibit it entirely, but Shia is mostly okay with it. Islam is a major deep dive for me, and I'd like to finish this video at some point. But yeah, for the most part, many branches of Islam discourage or outright prohibit depictions of the Prophet Muhammad. If you are a Muslim watching this video and would like to elaborate further, please feel free to correct me in the comment section and give more context. I would like to read that, actually. There are some edgy artists out there drawing him in a not-so-good way, you know? Edgelords are gonna edgelord, you know? I mean, I guess the word edge means something different now, but you know what I mean. There is one infamous incident, though, of a French satirical magazine, Charlie Hebdo, publishing a cartoon of the Prophet. So on January 7th, 2015, two brothers, Islamic extremists who don't deserve to be named, number 1 and 2, came into the building with guns and killed 12 people and injured 11 others. Al-Qaeda, an Islamic extremist terrorist group, cited an offensive cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad as a motive. The two were later taken down by police 2 days later. There was actually another related terror attack that took place in Paris on the 9th in a supermarket, where another scumbag who doesn't deserve to be named took hostages and killed 4 people before also being killed by the police. Now remember, these people are extremists and took their beliefs too far. Imagine that, getting killed for drawing a cartoon. I mean, sure, it's offensive, but really? You're gonna kill people over cartoons? Cartoons! Anyway, onto a funnier and more lighthearted entry. A little bit gross, too. Jello Apocalypse fart stuff. Jello Apocalypse is a YouTube animator that I actually talked about on the channel in the past in my localizers video. He's currently known for making one of the worst localizations in anime history for the new dub of anime rom-com classic Lovely Complex. He also proclaimed that he fixed the show by making it cancer and is a tall women hater. Listen, being cringe is fine and all, but tall women slander will not be tolerated in this community. Damn, I got a little too heated there. I like tall chicks, okay? Should also add an aside before I get to the real meat and potatoes of this entry. He had a series of animations on his channel called So This Is Basically, where he would break down pieces of media to their fundamentals, and did one on Tumblr. He has since posted an apology on the video that's longer than the average AI bro's justification for using stolen images to generate poorly rendered Gooner material, and honestly, I just find that fucking hilarious. So, Jello Apocalypse may have been Pepper Spot Sunshine all along. Maybe. Just maybe. So Pepper Spot Sunshine was a Deviant Art account that drew fart fetish art. Yeah. Now, I don't really give a shit if people have weird fetishes, nor do I care. whatever, as long as it's not illegal. But some of these drawings contain canonically underage characters, which, I mean, it's a drawing, but yeah, at the same time, like, what are you doing? What's wrong with you? That's my stance on that particular offshoot of NSFW art. Like, I understand it's just a drawing, but, like, come on, what the fuck? There was also some Lolita-ass stories on the Pepper Spot Sunshine account too, but there's not definitive proof that Pepper Spot and Jello are the same person, but damn are they really close. I don't really care that much about this because I dislike Jello Apocalypse on principle for being an art vandalizer, better known these days as localizers, so I'm just going to assume the worst but move on with my life at the same time. You know, I really don't care too much. I don't know. But I do not like this creator, so I am biased, but there's a pretty good video by YouTuber Toastify breaking the situation down further. I'll link it in the description, but based on the channels my viewers watch tab in YouTube Studio, a lot of you may have already seen it. So, I guess watch it again. On to the next one. Stone Toss. Stone Toss is cringe. Alright, that wraps up tier 4. See you next time. No, okay, good, no. Alright, before we begin, guess what we gotta talk about again? You guys are never gonna guess. Go on, guess. Yeah, politics. Alright, so let me tell you about Breitbart in cringy comic form. Stone Toss is a comic artist with the Republican Party's phallus surgically attached to the inside of his mouth. He's known for his provocative right-leaning political comics. Now, to be fair, some of these are actually pretty funny, like probably his most famous one, the How Does This Help Us Sell Burgers one. There are a few that are quite funny regardless of political leanings. The times when he does apolitical comics, they're actually pretty good. However, there are some comics that would make even the average conservative go, oh, yeah, I don't know about that one, buddy. There are obviously certain groups of people he obviously has immense spite for.
What is the best gun to defend from a Jew?
I would recommend either a 9mm or a 45.
And it's very apparent. And you might be thinking, oh, John's just a leftoid and doesn't get it. Guys, did you not watch the Adam Ellis entry? Two wrongs don't make a right. I will say, despite some of his comics being a bit concerning, to say the least, there's some weirdos on Reddit that watches every move. There's one where he made a comic that was just a pun and apolitical, and there was a whole thread about trying to interpret how it makes him like a Nazi or colonizer or incel or whatever the buzzword the left is using to call out the right today. You know how these political entries go. One person has an opinion and another person takes that personally. It's a waste of time and effort that could be put to better use anywhere else. Oh, and there was also the doxing incident recently. So Stone Toss got doxed by one of these Reddit weirdos, and honestly, he took it like a champ. He was just like, whatever, and kept doing what he's been doing. Obviously, doxing people is wrong, no matter how much you hate them. Don't do it, okay? But if it ever happens to you, I'd say use the Stone Toss method, because nobody cared afterwards. Now, I will say, while some of his comics are a bit much, there's not a lot more to this entry. He's just an edgy boy that some people hate, and that's about it. Alright, and that concludes the Dark, Weird, and Controversial Artist Iceberg Tier 4. Alright, the Dark, Weird, and Controversial Artist Iceberg Tier 5. We're starting to get into darker territory. If you enjoy my videos over a meal, firstly, thank you. I take that as a compliment, but I'd advise against it for this and all future tiers, as we will be taking a look at some gross stuff, for lack of a better word. As for corrections to Tier 4, the main thing is one controversy around Bivsy Pop I missed. Apparently she drew relations of an inappropriate variety between animals and humans. Someone explained that the characters in her comic Zoophobia were technically human/furry hybrids that could switch form, and honestly, it sounds like the 300-year-old vampire defense, which we will actually be covering in this tier. I don't know, I'm mostly done with Bivsy Pop, but if you guys want me to review that comic in a future video, let me know in the comments. Also, there were a few comments in the last tier that were angry that I wasn't a full-blown liberal. Not a conservative either. Politics unfortunately came up a lot in the last tier, and it's an extremely volatile subject matter, but hey, you, dear viewer, and me, the creator, may not see eye to eye on every issue, but that doesn't mean we can't be friends. Used to be that way a long time ago, but times have changed. But that's besides the point. Just glad to put that tier behind us. Oh, and once again, it may appear I'm going out of order, but that's just a matter of certain entries needing certain words that you can't say something before like 2 or 2.5 minutes in on YouTube videos. We will cover everything. Probably still get demonetized. So without further ado, tier 5. Oh, one more thing before we get started. I forgot to mention Joe Cat. There was an update to the Joe Cat situation. He came back to the internet, did a cute little drawing. I don't know, I like it. He's a Yakuza fan, so he's alright by me. But apparently people are accusing him of being a groomer and a PDF file because he drew this picture. I don't really see the logic in that, but whatever. Leave Joe Cat alone, man. Alright, for real. On to Tier 5. Alfonso Dunn versus Jake Parker. This entry refers to a feud between content creator/artist Alfonso Dunn and Jake Parker. Jake Parker is known for creating the Inktober Challenge, an annual challenge amongst visual artists to create an ink drawing every day of October, usually coupled with an official prompt list. Side note, please watch my Inktober videos on this channel after this and hit like and subscribe. Anyway, this challenge has been running since 2009. However, 2020, in all its nightmarish glory, would see quite the shift in attitude to the challenge, and particularly Mr. Parker himself. Alfonso Dunn, for those who don't know, is a popular art YouTuber who creates videos mostly about pen and ink sketching. He's known for his very calm vibes and down-to-earth approach, so this whole situation really came out of left field. So, Dunn has a series of books on inking and was a fan of Parker in the Inktober Challenge. In 2020, Parker released a book about inking. Dunn saw this and cross-referenced Parker's book with his own, and he proclaimed plagiarism. Now, to anyone familiar with inking and inking techniques, it's highly likely that two separate books by two separate authors might share some of the same information. At first, people were in support of Dunn, but the attitude shifted when people realized that a lot of the same topics would be covered across various how-to-draw books. This also prompted several artists to create their own art-themed October challenge and spawned many knockoffs. It actually got kind of ridiculous that year. But over time, people's attitudes shifted against Dunn and any potential lawsuit was dropped. It's a whole thing. It appears that Dunn and Parker never got to court, but I have a feeling they don't like each other. It was just a matter of someone seeing something that just wasn't there, just like those political entries in the previous tier. Anyway, that's the saga of Inktober 2020. Again, go watch my Inktober videos. Onward to an ancient and mysterious artifact, the Voynich Manuscript. The Voynich Manuscript is a historical artifact that's classified as an illuminated manuscript. These books are handcrafted and bound with hand-drawn illustrations and lettering. My personal favorite is the Book of Kells, but I'm getting sidetracked. The Voynich manuscript, named for a Polish book dealer, Wilfrid Voynich, who acquired it in the early 20th century, has remained a mystery to this day. It is written in a strange language and has various illustrations of wildlife as well as diagrams that are not of this world. The author has never been identified, and it's dated back to the 15th century. To this day, a code has not been cracked. The world's cryptographers like to say it's uncrackable, but personally, I don't think it was meant to be cracked. I honestly believe it was just some troll artist who thought, it'd be funny if someone found this years later and thought it was extraterrestrials or something. Or, maybe it really was aliens. The world may never know. Where are her organs? I love this one, and honestly, I'm surprised I haven't gotten comments like this under one of my drawings. So, the phrase, "where are her organs," is something terminally online Twitter addicts like to say underneath drawings of women with exaggerated proportions. This phrase is also interchangeable with the NPC response that's a slight variation of the phrase, "OP has never seen a real woman." I remember my first encounter with this phrase under one of Sakimi-chan's drawings, back when she was just doing pinups and not those really weird comics, but that's besides the point. It actually got to the point where she apologized for drawing certain body types, but the majority of her audience didn't care what a small number of detractors said, and explained that she should draw what she wants. As should you, dear viewer. Now, I'd also say it's kind of ironic that the people that comment on these kinds of things usually align ideologically with the body positivity movement. And it's funny that they shame women that are actually built like that, because if they have ever gone outside and just looked around instead of having their eyes surgically glued to TikTok, they'd realize various body types exist, and one of them is very curvaceous. So, essentially, these people are engaging in body shaming, which is really funny. I should also note that you never see these kinds of comments on drawings of characters like Baki or Kenshiro from Fist of the North Star, who have physiques only obtainable by a surplus of steroids. The argument that these absurdly tall buff men are classified as power fantasies rather than sexualization. Which, by the way, I've seen the Jujutsu Kaisen fanbase. Men definitely do get sexualized. And should also note, who says that these absurdly curvy characters aren't power fantasies for women, right? Anyway, It's just a bunch of terminally online weirdos being terminally online weirdos again, but I do believe that this might be the last instance of it on this Iceberg. Hopefully, I'm getting tired of talking about these morons. Oh, and quick side note, the most popular NSFW artists on the internet are majority female. Just thought I'd add that. Now, onward to the cursed anime trilogy, oh boy. Boku no Pico. Why did I put this here? Boku no Pico, if you've been on YouTube long enough, was a bit of a meme in the anime community back when the hobby was a bit more niche. It's also one of the most repulsive things ever made, and I say that objectively. So this anime is about an extremely inappropriate relationship between an adult man and a literal boy. Well, literal 2D boy. It's classified as Shotokan anime. We will be discussing that term in more detail in a future entry in this very video, so stay tuned. It's explicitly sexualizing characters that are not adults, and that's no good.
That's no good.
Yes, I'm going to use that Sonic clip forever. Anyway, in 2016, it became a bit of a meme on YouTube, mostly due to PewDiePie doing a reaction video to it. Saying that Boku no Pico is your favorite anime is sort of one of those things that people say, ironically, to be edgelords, you know. Out of the 3 anime in this cursed trilogy, I find this one the most offensive. While Kite and Midori can be argued for having some artistic merit, this one was literally sold as smut to people that think the word map doesn't just mean the thing in the GPS. It's really gross and I wish it didn't exist. However, this also spawned one of my favorite Monkey Jones clips.
Alright, 1 second here. E-O-K-U-N-O K-I-C-O No, sorry, doesn't look like we got that one.
Is there any way you could, like, special order it or something, do you think?
1 second here, I could try. Let me look it up. Fuck. Right. No, we cannot order that one for you. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Thanks for your time. Have a great day.
I miss Monkey. I know he's still on here, but it's not the same, man. Anyway, on to the other 2. Kite. Kite is the only one of these 3 anime that I have seen. You may have seen the infamous clip where characters fall through like 3 levels. Pretty well animated, I might add. This one isn't quite as bad as the other 2 in my opinion. So, Kite follows the story of a character named Sawa who is orphaned and is taken in by a dude named Akai. She becomes an assassin and there's some other dude, and honestly, it's not very good story-wise. Does have some pretty nice art direction and some cuts like the aforementioned 3-level one. Yeah, I didn't really like it that much. Anyway, so this film was heavily banned because there are some naughty scenes involving Sawa who's canonically a minor. Oh, should also note that this is apparently Quentin Tarantino's favorite anime. I don't remember seeing any foot stuff in it. There's 2 versions of the film, one with the naughty scenes, one without it. I've actually only seen the edited version. Honestly, I really don't understand why this one was so controversial when there's so much stuff in anime out there being made to this day that's way worse. I mean, it's kind of mid in my opinion. I don't think it's that great. Anyway, onto an anime more known for being a TikTok trend. Midori. Midori, also known as Shoujo Tsubaki, is an anime that was banned in Japan. It tells a rather disturbing and upsetting story, so if you're not up for that, just skip to the next timestamp, but for those who are still here, the story follows a girl named Midori. Midori is orphan, a lot of orphans in this cursed anime trilogy, huh? Anyway, she ends up joining a freak show circus where horrible things happen to her that if I even try to sidestep and use alternate phrasing for, I will not just be getting the old yellow dollar sign, Mr. Red dollar sign will be making an appearance, and this video might even get age restricted. So, whatever you're thinking, yes, that does happen to her. It's awful. And you'd think there'd be a happy ending where she escapes, but the ending is rather ambiguous and open to interpretation based off of the synopsises I've read. I haven't watched it, like I said. And while I can say I kind of like the art direction, the content's kind of putting me off from giving it a try. This film falls under the category of Erogoro, which I covered previously. This film also happened to make its rounds on TikTok for some reason, and it's not as obscure as it used to be. If you really do want to watch it, and I recommend you don't, especially if you're sensitive to these awful subjects. Yes, whatever you're thinking, it happens to her. It is available on the Internet Archive. I don't recommend it, and absolutely don't watch it if you're not of age. I'm not really sure if there's any real artistic merit to this one, or if the director was just trying to shock audiences. Well, he certainly got the latter, since it ended up getting banned. Anyway, I think we're done talking about weeb shit. Now, time for a laugh, because we all could use one. Okay, time for a palate cleanser after all that cursed anime. This one is just kind of funny, honestly. 1000 Accidental Racism Incident. 1000, a premier YouTube artist, beloved in the community. However, he has a sinister secret. He's actually racist! No, not at all. Like, seriously, that's a bald-faced lie. No, he's not. So, in short, 1000 was working on his playing card set, which turned out great, by the way. I have mine right here. And encountered a mild hiccup. When he went to make the Spades suite of cards, he drew the King of Spades as a black guy. So, those familiar with the history of racial slurs brought it to his attention that in a different context, the word spade can be a derogatory term for a black person. Obviously not his intention. Yeah, it was just a bunch of nothing, but he did alter the card. Anyway, I don't know, I just found the situation a bit silly, and to be honest, we need a breather down in this tier. Anyway, back into the horror of it all. Gacha Life. Gacha Life, as the name implies, is a gacha game. If you're unfamiliar, it's the third worst game mechanic after procedurally generated levels and bad crafting systems. Yes, I said it. Anyway, gachas are where you use in-game currency, usually purchased with real-world currency, to pull the gacha for new characters. It's literally a slot machine, bro. Anyway, Gacha Life is a cute little game that lets you create anime-style avatars and is popular amongst younger kids. There are a crap ton of fan-made animations of this game, and hey, if it gets the players to be creative, it's okay in my book. But, beneath the surface, Gacha Life has a deep, dark secret that a lot of you watching probably already know about. And that's Gacha Heat. Apparently this is the PDF file tier. I am sincerely apologetic to 1000 and Maxime Zicardi, who we'll be talking about next. I didn't mean to put you guys here. It just sort of happened. I am so sorry. Anyway, what's Gacha Heat? Gacha Heat is awful. Just awful. Next entry. Maxime Zicardi and blood painting. Okay. I gotta stop using that joke. Anyway, Gacha Heat is a term referring to animations deliberately sexualizing these Gacha Life characters. Now, normally I wouldn't care, Rule 34, all that, but the major issue is that the player base of Gacha Life is very young, and these videos are basically a whole other Elsagate scenario, where people are making degenerate content targeted towards people who are at an age where they should absolutely not be seeing that stuff. So yeah, that's Gacha Heat. Anyway, gacha games are ass. Play literally anything else. Bit of a shorter entry, and I know that's been a bit of a theme here today, but some of this info makes me feel like I need to take a shower at max heat and scrape my eyes out, but that's just me. Anyway, next was just more concerning than disturbing. Maxime Zicardi and blood painting. If you're particularly squeamish about blood, please skip to the timestamp for the next entry. For all who remain, let's get into it. Maxime Zicardi is one of my personal favorite artists. He's known for his very dark and visceral style and his heavy association with the black metal scene. It's highly likely if you're into black metal you may have come across his work. There's also something he's kind of infamous for, and that's his blood paintings. And now, if you're unfamiliar, you might be thinking that he's using something like pig's blood. Blood painting is nothing new, and I think even Jazza did a video painting with it. However, Mr. Zicardi likes to acquire his blood in a different way, and I do mean his blood. So, he draws it from his wrist. Yeah. Now, I've actually exchanged a few social media messages with Zicardi, and he's a perfectly normal guy. He just likes to take his art to the extreme, I guess. Now, he did do a video years ago about his process, but it has since been taken down with his entire first YouTube channel because of self-harm, probably. His music's pretty good if you're into black metal too, so check out his new channel and send him some love from me. Link in the description. I can't stop the guy from doing this, but I don't condone it. Like, not at all. Don't do that. It's painful too. Like, it's gonna hurt. However, if you're not grossed out by it, I think some of his pieces are badass. There are some other artists out there that paint in the same method, but again, I do not advise this practice. Let's talk about something a little weird and silly. Go animate. Oh boy. So, Go Animate is a free animation web app. It has since been rebranded to Vyond, that. Now, you think this is just some throwaway software, like something for companies to make quick little presentations at first glance or something like that, right? Oh, but Go Animate is an iceberg all its own, my friend. So, there are a lot of people right here on YouTube that use Go Animate to take a swing at animation. And as someone who's attempted animation in the past, I will say, it's very, very hard. Seriously, animators, I salute you. So here's a quick software you could just at the very least make something. So, of course, tons of people are going to play with it. Now, these people, however, might not be of sound mind. They all use robot voices and feature the character Caillou getting grounded for an oddly specific and absurdly large number of years. And they really want to drive home the fact that Caillou was grounded. I mean, to be fair, Caillou is kind of a little shit, so I guess it's acceptable. Honestly, this is a rabbit hole, man. I would really like to pick the brains of someone that makes these. I mean, it's just bizarre. Like, here's just a taste.
That's it, Caillou. You are so freaking grounded forever.
What? I am grounded forever. What do you mean by that, Dead?
Get upstairs to your room right now and never, ever come out.
You mean I am to stay in my room forever, for the rest of my life? You mean I will never come out of my room ever again?
That's right, Caillou. You are grounded forever, for the rest of your life, so hop to it.
Life is so freaking unfair.
And there's like millions more out there. If you make these weird Caillou gets grounded animations and you're watching this video, please leave some insight in the comments section. Like, I'm legitimately at a loss here. Like, what is this, man? Anyway, onto some gross shit. Lolicon art is gross. Next entry. Ben the Looney. Speaking of lolicons. No, alright. Lolicon art, interchangeable with Shotokan art, are depictions of characters in a sexualized manner, and if you recall previously, I said that NSFW art is fine. However, this one particular offshoot, in my personal opinion, is no good.
That's no good.
I told you I'd never stop using that clip. Okay, straight up. It's just drawings of little girls and boys, but the lolicons like to defend it by saying, it's actually a 300-year-old dragon or vampire or whatever. Look, man, you're a PDF file. Just admit it. Now, there are instances of adults looking childlike. There was a pretty viral story of a man dating a woman who looked like a child a while back. So it's not impossible for an adult to look like that, but let's be honest, the people that are into this aren't into adults. The characters depicted, despite being canonically a million years old or whatever, seemingly all have a tendency to still behave like children, so come on. And there was, of course, the infamous Shadman example, which I covered back in Tier 2. So, just for some historical context, I wanted to get a bit of info on the history of this, and I am definitely now on a list because of it. But for you, dear viewer, I will tell you, the word lolly is derived from the novel Lolita, which is somehow considered a classic, which tells the story of an inappropriate relationship between a middle-aged man and a young girl. Lolicon comes from Japanese anime and manga and describes people that are into that shit. I'm sorry, but I feel disgusting just typing this shit and I haven't even recorded it yet. Well, I guess now I did. Anyway, the origins in anime and manga are traced back to the 1970s, influenced by the works of Hideo Azuma and Kanakamatsu. Well, that's what one of the sources that popped up on Google said. To be honest, I don't feel like looking at their work to verify if that's true. That's just what I got from one Google search. Oh my god, he didn't do enough research on this one. I don't want to do enough research on this one. Technically, this kind of artwork, as long as it's of fictional characters that don't actually exist, is actually completely legal. But if you support this stuff, I'm looking at you a little different. Also doesn't help these lolicons cases that the face of them is someone like the White Bowser, who is a rabbit hole all his own. I believe it was either Kiwi Tapes or McSmokey, one of those lolcow historian guys. They did a pretty good video on him. I'll put which one on screen and link it in the description. Shotokan is just the male version of lolicon. Anyway, my video is 99% likely to get demonetized for this one entry, so please like, comment, and subscribe. This shit is gross and I don't like it. But it's also worth covering so you're aware of it. Now, I'm not here to say that there's a slippery slope correlation, but if you are into it, I think you need to get your hard drive checked. Anyway, happy to put this one behind me, okay? Hold it back vomit here. Now, on to one infamous lolicon. Ben the Looney. Okay, so Ben the Looney was, or is, I'm not sure if he's still working in this genre, one of those YouTube story time animators. You know, has a time-lapse or a slideshow / animation and talks shit over it. Kind of like some of my older videos. I'm pulling a lot of information from a mini-doc another YouTuber made, that's Jormy49. I will link to the full video in the description. It's a really well done video. Send him some love for me. But back to Ben the Looney. So he's mostly known for being a Shadman defender. And you might think, before or after Shadman did that thing we talked about in Tier 2? Probably before, right? Well, no. After. Yeah. So, as the kids say these days, big yikes on that one. There's a lot to go through, so I'm just going to give you the greatest hits. At one point, he decided to draw his PNG avatar thing as completely nude, and this isn't like someone like The Odd Ones Out, where the style permits it. This was like a naked human dude, kind of weird, but he left the nudist colony after a while. There was also his top 10 hottest animated woman video, where the majority were characters that were underage. If I'm going to clarify something from the previous entry that I know a very small handful of people will argue in the comments section, I get that these are just drawings. I understand that, okay? That's a fair argument, but also, like, come on, what the fuck is wrong with you? I guess you can legally make it, but it's disgusting. Just disgusting.
Ugh. Brother, ugh. What's that?
Anyway, back to Ben's greatest hits. He drew some lolicon art of some Cartoon Network show that I'm unfamiliar with, and yeah, that's a little gross. But remember those racist cartoons that I talked about a few tiers back? Well, Ben did a video on them and basically defended their existence. Now, to be fair, the Censored 11 might be good as a time capsule to see how far we've come. I can see that kind of thing for their existence, sort of a reminder to never do that shit again, you know? The same mentality is why you can still visit Auschwitz in Germany. But Ben defended them more in the way that they were meant to be consumed as entertainment. Now, this started a feud with another YouTuber named SBN3, and it was a whole thing, and to be honest with the full context, nah, he's not really racist. That word gets thrown around so much these days, it's lost its meaning. There's, of course, the aforementioned Shadman incident, and then there's the Toby dispute. Remember her? Damn, we're pulling from all the previous tiers. This is like the Avengers of awful people. Yeah, they were beefing over lolicon content. It's a whole thing. They're all whole things. Honestly, just refer back to the Toby entry in Tier 2. I covered this. Anyway, he still uploads on a renamed channel to this day, and yeah, that's Ben the Looney. Again, check out Jormy49's video for a comprehensive deep dive. Honestly, he ain't that bad, but whenever lolicon stuff gets brought up, it rubs me the wrong way, you know? It's just, I don't like it. Like, why? Stop. Don't do that. Ew. Alright, and that wraps up Tier 5 of the dark, weird, and controversial artist Iceberg. I got a new mic, so if you're watching this in the inevitable supercut, that's why the audio quality is suddenly different. Okay, on with the show. We have reached the absolute bottom of the iceberg, the Marianas Trench, if you will. As for any addendums or corrections to the previous tiers, Midori is an adaptation of a manga called Shoujo Tsubaki. Auschwitz is located in Poland, not Germany. Wow, can't believe I messed up that one. Gacha Life has gacha mechanics but no gambling, and we have a Shadman update of all things. Yeah, so recently there's been some stuff going on, and basically this one tweet I saw calling Shadman the Epstein of YouTubers makes perfect sense. I mean, Shadman himself, I have no idea what he's doing or where he's at, but there's now a weird Shadman connection theory. Oh, and speaking of that creep, one more thing. It seems the legality of con artwork actually differs from country to country. Really don't care to look it up because that shit's gross, and if you're into that, please become intimately acquainted with your local wood chipper. Should also note that the novel Lolita isn't necessarily just gross man enters inappropriate relationship with underage girl. Someone in the comments section brought to my attention that the author Vladimir Nabokov actually suffered CSA himself, and the book has been somewhat misinterpreted. Admittedly, I haven't read it, I just cited it as the source of the words and con, since that's what the entry was about. Alright, that stuff is disgusting, I don't like it, and you'll never hear me talk about it again. Anyway, that's it for corrections and updates. Before we begin, like the previous tiers, it may appear I'm going out of order, but that's just a matter of using necessary words after the 2 minute or 2.5 minute mark, or whatever it is. So, without further ado, let's begin the finale. That's not actually the finale because we're doing the viewer-submitted bonus tier after this, but, whatever. Let's get on with it. Linkara's webcomic, The Lightbringer. Man, I really should have moved this one up into an earlier tier, but luckily this makes me delay the nasty stuff. Good lord, a red dollar sign would be on me like a fly on shit if I started with Vanessa Teagues. Anyway, Linkara, The Lightbringer.
I'm the Lightbringer. I'm the fucking universe.
Anyway, Linkara is a YouTuber who covers comic books. He was actually one of the earliest adopters of the YouTube format to review comics and has been a staple of the channel Awesome, formerly That Guy with the Glasses crew, since back when you had to have a Blip TV account to make ad revenue from your videos. So he's a YouTube OG practically. As such, he falls into the angry reviewer genre, or at least adjacent to it, popularized by James Rolfe, better known as the Angry Video Game Nerd, in the mid-2000s, which is 20 years ago now. Fuck, I'm old. So, Linkara loves his superhero comics. No matter what you say about him or his shenanigans, which I'll briefly cover, you can't deny that. So, he made one himself, and, it was bad. Really, really, really bad. It was so bad, in fact, I did an entire review on my series of videos where I review controversial or notoriously awful webcomics. If you want the full review, check out the card and I'll add it to the end screen. But the long and short of it is that it's a very, very generic superhero comic book. Like, it literally feels like AI in terms of writing. The art is rather crude and definitely more toward a beginner style, which actually was altered in the last few chapters where he hired an artist and it shifted more towards a cartoony animated style. Think like those Western reboots of legacy shows that tried to feel like anime from the early and mid-2000s, like He-Man and Ninja Turtles. That's the vibe the later chapters gave me. Linkara is mostly known for being the guy that the crew at Oni Plays likes to poke fun at a lot. Now, I'm not super well versed on the Oni Plays lore, but the guys are actually big fans of the channel Awesome and That Guy with Glasses crew. One of them does a really good impression of Linkara and often refers to him as the Lightbringer in a tongue-in-cheek way. Linkara, unlike Nostalgia Critic, who actually recently worked with the crew on their show Smiling Friends, is not a good sport about it. As a matter of fact, he's quite salty about it. There were also some leaks about Linkara's search history on Rule 34, which included some illegal stuff. No lollies, but we got dead bodies and non-con, as well as the green M&M. Well, I mean, fair. There's also a whole saga about this creator, Iron Liz, who's a trans woman to my knowledge, and Linkara dated her and claimed she wasn't trans, and she was actually open about her transness. Honestly, that's a whole can of worms I don't want to open right now. But one good thing, I don't know who does it on the Only Plays crew, but one of them does an excellent Trump impression and created one of the best memes from a fictional interaction with Linkara at a Trump rally. And there's really good animation, I'll link here, that I watch like once a week. It's great. Anyway, that was Linkara, the Lightbringer. Check out my review for a more in-depth look at the comic itself. But remember, don't give him his jacket back. Nicholas Fedorov. Nicholas Fedorov is an amazing artist and musician. I legitimately love his work so much, but there's more to the story than just the weirdness of his animations. Okay, so Fedorov makes these wild 3D animations based around like late 90s and early 2000s CG. His intent is to be as accurate as possible to the era. To my understanding, he actually uses ancient software to make them. His stuff is really trippy and weird, and the music's awesome. But there was some mild controversy, or rather upheaval, in his fanbase that led him to leave the internet, at least for a while. So Chad Tronic is a YouTuber that frequently does reaction videos. He usually picks a theme such as curse commercials and runs with a few videos. Now, these are actually pretty quality compared to other reaction channels that just steal content. Chad actually applies the transformative part of transformative content. He started a series, which I think he's still doing, called Deep Into YouTube, years ago now. Damn. Time just keeps moving forward mercilessly. In the inaugural episode, he reacted to Fedorov's catalog. Now, a lot of people, like myself, thought Fedorov's work was fucking awesome and started following him because of it. But Chad has a much, much larger audience than Fedorov, and to be honest, I don't think the demographics converge. So, some people were likely leaving some unpleasant or idiotic comments to my understanding. Fedorov was irritated with this and shut down his comment section and went so far as to remove his channel. Now, I can't quite find all the details details, but I do think Fedorov might be one of those artists that likes being obscure and hidden. Although I'm not really sure. Also, when I started researching this, it turns out he has a new channel called Proxima64 where he posts animation and music, so I don't know. Maybe he just wanted to shake the Chadtronic stands or something. Who knows? Anyway, it's cool stuff. Check it out, especially if you grew up in the 90s and early 2000s. Moving along. Country humans. So, I touched on this briefly in the Deviant Art entry all the way back in the first tier, so country humans is actually an evolution of country balls. Country balls, which itself was a riff on Poland ball. Poland ball was patient zero in this story. Poland ball was a personified character of the country of Poland created by a British artist only known as Falco. Some artists saw this and started to make their own country balls to make funny interactions that are sometimes just blatantly offensive. Eventually this evolved into country humans, which is a bunch of yaoi loving artists that like to make gay ships of various personified countries. And yeah, it's quite the rabbit hole. Honestly, just go read the wiki. This was a bit of a quick one, but I think it's a good one to break up all the awful stuff a bit. Solar Sands and Aziz both have a pretty good video on it. I only really put it down here at the bottom because of how offensive some of the comics can be. More so the balls than the humans. Honestly, I find it hysterical, but some people might be a bit sensitive to seeing their country turn into a yaoi farm. Anyway, that's the origin. I know I could go on and on, but the wiki is deep, so we're just gonna move on. Illuminations versus Think Before You Sleep. Ongoing. Well, this was ongoing at the time of starting this iceberg, but it appears the dust has finally settled. So, Illuminations versus Think Before You Sleep is an interesting case of what happens when you don't mind your own business. Honestly, I should really rename this Noah Samson versus Think Before You Sleep featuring Illuminations, but I'm getting ahead of myself. This was actually pretty recent. So where do I start? I guess we'll start with TBYS, who I will be referring to as Sean from here on out due to the length of his username being inconvenient, okay? And his name is Sean. So, Sean runs a commentary channel. He also sounds like the physical embodiment of the nerd emoji. His content is what you would call anti-woke grifting. Oh boy, we're talking about politics again. So, in all honesty, I used to think that Sean's content was innocuous, was right-leaning, but whatever. But in his last video at the time of writing this script, he claimed that autism is a, quote, fake disability, so fuck that guy. Sounds like those alpha male douche influencers that claim depression doesn't exist. Alright, go ahead, keep telling me how easy you got it and that everyone is born with the same advantages and privileges in life as you, despite luck being an extremely important factor, but... excuse me, I got sidetracked. Sorry, it pisses me off when people claim that certain, like, mental disorders don't exist. Like, fuck you. Anyway, Illuminations is a YouTube animator, kind of falling into that story time genre, where the creator will go over something that happened in their life and animate it. So, she made an animation about the fat acceptance movement and how she was for it. It should be noted this movement started out as body positivity and slowly morphed into fat acceptance. Body positivity is one thing, sure. Myself, and I'm sure you watching, don't think anybody should be judged with preconceived notions simply based on their physical appearance. However, the idea of fat acceptance is a bit of a double-edged sword. Like, I don't care if you're fat or whatever, you know, but encouraging others to live an obviously unhealthy lifestyle is probably not a good idea. Should also be noted that a lot of prominent fat influencers, and yes, that's a thing, have passed away due to complications caused by or worsened by their obesity. But that's not what this entry is about. So, Illuminations made an animation about the fat acceptance movement and basically just stated information that's just flat out incorrect. Like the infamous food is just food line where she proclaimed all food is the same, which is just blatantly untrue. Okay, there's a big difference between a salad and an Oreo, you know what I mean? Sean saw this video as an opportunity to gain more anti-woke brownie points rather than just being like whatever and moving on with his life like the majority of people who came across this video. So he went on about the inconsistencies in her logic but made a fatal error. For some reason, during this video, he went off the rails and started viciously attacking Illumination's physical appearance. If the video wasn't taken down, you can go watch it and find out what he said. I'm not putting a clip here because, one, he's just kind of being an asshole, and two, it might actually violate YouTube's bullying policy. But, yeah, he just totally ripped into her mercilessly. unsolicited too. Now, Illuminations herself tried to get Sean's video removed. However, it turns out she didn't even watch it, just that her friends brought it to her attention. Despite the segment of Sean relentlessly ripping into her appearance, there were some legitimate good counterpoints to the whole fat acceptance movement, but that one segment is probably enough where someone who might be a bit more sensitive might get very upset. Not me, I fucking love mean comments. They are so goddamn funny. Usually riddled with typos and grammatical errors, but funny nonetheless. Like, I expect to see some on this video. I can't wait. I'm always checking the Hell for Review section. Somehow, during this whole thing, Illuminations got doxxed, which once again, I'll reiterate, I don't care how much you hate someone. Don't fucking dox people. Okay, I don't know what happened after that. She kind of leaves the story, moving on to the next chapter. Now enter Noah Samson. Now, I think Noah here might actually be the worst thing that BreadTube has to offer. If you don't know what a BreadTube is, well, basically it's an informal group of leftist content creators that preach stuff like communism and socialism with left-wing talking points. So the antithesis of the anti-woke grifter crowd. They're the pro-woke grifter crowd. And they go back and forth with each other, and everyone gets that sweet ad revenue on those cushy sponsorship deals. At the end of the day, it's all bullshit. Go live your life, man. Stop wasting your time with this. Anyway, if you're familiar with the Think Before You Sleep lore, him and Noah have had a beef that's been ongoing for like 4 years now. Unlike other woke and anti-woke creators who go back and forth clearly for the money, I believe these two legitimately hate each other so much. So, Noah Samson saw Sean's video and got to work on his next attack. And then it was another wave of back and forths. Like, would you guys just fight for real already? Do this stupid YouTube boxing thing or whatever. I want to see both of them get hit. Eventually, Sean's channel got a strike, and I'm pretty sure his original reaction to Illuminations was removed. But give it time. I'm sure within a few months, Noah and Sean will be at it again. It's all so exhausting. This is why I sidestep the political aspect of some of these. It's all bullshit. Everyone's just trying to make money by making people mad or sad. Me? I'll admit I'm a grifter, an art grifter. All I want is for people to see and enjoy my artwork and content. That's it. Maybe make a few bucks. This political discourse stuff is for mental patients, man. And honestly, you take one misstep, you might end up in court. Speaking of things that might have ended up in court, Amanda Darko versus Spencer's Gifts. Alright, so I couldn't find a lot of info on this, but I remember this happening in real time, so that's why I put it on the Iceberg, because I've been a fan of this artist for years, so bear with me, this one is very surface level. I mean, they're all kind of surface level, but this one, I really don't have a lot of details. So Amanda Darko is a popular and talented artist who works in a genre one would call spicy. Yeah, she draws hentai. Okay? But she's a really good artist. This artist, right here. Good stuff. One of my favorites. Check out the, like, cool little, like, holographic effect she put on this one. Isn't that awesome? Anyway, we'll get back to her in a bit. Spencer's Gifts is a well-known store that's sort of like a Hot Topic and a gag gift store rolled into one. And for any Europeans watching, a Hot Topic was a place where mid-2000s scene girls gathered to purchase My Chemical Romance CDs and Nightmare Before Christmas t-shirts. Side note, bro, I literally don't get why My Chemical Romance was so big when they sounded exactly the same as every other pop-punk band of the era. Like, was it because the singer's Joe Rogan's cousin or something? Is there like a Rogan special sauce or something? I don't get it. They don't sound anything special to me. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Now Spencer's Gifts sells goofy-ass t-shirts with artworks on them. Amanda Darko is probably most known for drawing the Thick Bubble Boy or her character Ramen Chan. I have to put a censored version on screen because nipples are scary. Anyway, one day Spencer's puts out a t-shirt with Ramen Chan on it, and obviously once Darko got wind of it, legal action was threatened because she never signed off on it. To my knowledge, I believe they settled out of court and now she's rightly receiving royalties, but while researching this, I discovered something, and I can't quite entirely confirm it. So apparently Spencer's Gifts has a habit of stealing artwork to put on t-shirts and prints. Now, I only have some surface level evidence, but from what I've seen, they've been sued for this stuff before. Again, I can't find much more than hearsay on the whole situation, but mega companies stealing from independent artists is something that happens far more than it should. I don't know, guys. Personally, I'd recommend keeping an eye on your work and seeing if it's popping up anywhere else, especially in AI training data, but I've been over AI on this channel ad nauseum, alright? I'm done with that already. Maybe. If you're really concerned about your art being stolen, you can either use watermarks or only upload images at 72 dpi. Just so you know, if you're unfamiliar with the printing process, anything under 300 dpi, which is dots per inch, will be too low res to print. 72 dpi is the standard for screens. My recommendation for any digital artist watching this is to work in 300 dpi so you can print later if you want to, but export your file in 72 dpi to post online. Or you can slap a watermark on it, but personally I find that a bit gaudy. As for Amanda Darko, she's still making great degen artwork. Give her a follow if you're 18 or older and like women with thighs the size of tree trunks. Well, it's finally time. I have to talk about Vanessa Teagues. I don't want to talk about Vanessa Teagues. Alright, but before I do, if you're enjoying this video over a meal in advance, I am sorry. Periods. A natural part of life for half of the world's population. A completely normal thing that occurs in every woman's life. So let me ask you something. What happens when a spiritualist on her period meets the art world? So I've already covered blood painting when I went over the Maxime Tacardi entry, but let me ask you something. Where would a woman be able to draw blood from in order to use this paint that a man can't?
A vagina.
Well, Teagues, she paints with a period blood. Yeah, so, I think she was trying to express that periods are like a natural part of life or something, but, you know, so is pooping. Her series of paintings done with her menstrual blood is entitled Menstruala, sort of a play on the word mandala. Anyway, I'm actually kind of surprised that there aren't, like, any videos covering her work. I was considering trying to get a guest to come on and take this entry away from me. Preferably a female creator, because this is a matter of, well, it's not really my say. Was considering reaching out to Scumbagovich because this is her wheelhouse anyway, but I'm kind of intimidated by her sub count. Help me catch up there because I would love to collab with her on something in the future. She's great, by the way. Check her out if you don't know her. S-tier YouTuber. But that aside, Teagues herself does have a YouTube channel. There's a slideshow as well as an interview. And in the interview, which I unfortunately listened to, it's disclosed that apparently she has a master's degree in women's spirituality, which, you know when boomers say that repetitive joke about lesbian basket weaving degrees? That's what they're talking about. And that's about it. I feel like her work is infamous, but she isn't very well known herself. After going through the interview, which I'll link in the description below if you want to hear it, it turns out she's into moon cycle astrology stuff, which isn't surprising considering what her master's degree is in. I listened to the interview, and the whole theme of the Menstruala art pieces seemed to be about all the various cycles in life and how beautiful she finds the renewal in her menstrual cycle. To tell you the truth, personally, in my opinion, honestly, it sounds like a bunch of hokey woo new age spiritual bullshit to me. But I guess she had more intent behind the pieces more than the shock factor. Look, I'm a pretty open-minded guy, especially when it comes to artistic expression. Now, would I lump this in with poop and pee art? Maybe. I don't know. I'm a pretty big fan of Maxime Tacardi, who paints in his own blood all the time. I mean, for Teagues, it just comes out in a different way, I guess. I don't know. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments. It'd be interesting to see your takes, especially considering based on my analytics, my audience's gender is practically 50-50 now. But I'd equate this kind of medium to a male artist using his semen to create artwork, you know? It's just like, I really care how you rationalize it. It's kind of nasty, you know? Well, we'll leave the debate on this to the comment section. We're just going to move on. Alright, before we proceed to the final tier, I just want to say, if you've been here since the start of the Iceberg, thank you so much for joining me in this descent into absolute madness. I thought this idea would only get a couple hundred views, but after I posted tier 2, the channel absolutely blew up. Sure, I may not have those big-ass YouTuber numbers, but compared to my channel's engagement prior, it's night and day. I am no longer screaming into a void, and it's all thanks to you, dear viewer. So, I just want to interrupt here and say truly and honestly, thank you. Really, thank you. I appreciate it a lot, and now I have to talk about one of the most insane prison breaks in U.S. history. Richard Matt. The year, 2015. Location, Clinton Correctional Facility, New York. Objectives, escape. A darkness returned to the land of the free on June 6. Okay, I'm going to drop the spooky narrator thing. So, Richard Matt with accomplice David Sweat, managed to escape from the Clinton Correctional Facility on June 6, 2015. So for background, Richard Matt was a career criminal, a real Johnny in and out, burglary, theft, assault, and even non-consensual relations. God, I fucking hate YouTube. But what did him in was a murder conviction. He kidnapped a former boss, a man by the name of William Rickerson, and demanded to know where some money was stashed. He and his accomplice Lee Bates killed him and dismembered him. A year later, Matt committed a second murder. Charles Arnold Perrault. Forgive me if I mispronounce. He was caught and sentenced to 25 years to life with no parole. David Sweat, who's not really the point of this entry, but I'm sure you're curious. The long and short of it was basically an exchange of stolen goods spotted by a sheriff's deputy, Kevin Teresa. The criminal shot Teresa dead and Sweat ran him over with his car. The shooters got life without parole. The two essentially pulled a Shawshank Redemption and secretly tunneled their way out of the facility. They also had some help from the inside via corrupt corrections officers. Let me tell you, I remember when this happened. This was like 24/7 coverage, even more so for me as a New Yorker. Like, this was non-stop. Richard Matt was killed in Franklin County, New York, where he was spotted with a shotgun trying to kill a driver of a passing vehicle, most likely to steal the car and escape. This was on June 26th, 20 days after the escape. David Sweat was soon after captured on the 28th, and that was the end of that prison break. Still, it took nearly a month to get them both. What a wild story. So, what does this have to do with art, you're probably asking? Well, turns out, while locked down, Richard Matt took up painting. His genre was portraits, particularly of famous people. His style was realism. It should also be noted that he seemed to favor painting Democrat politicians, which in turn may have actually helped the Trump campaign that had just started that year. A lot of news stations prominently displayed his Hillary Clinton, the then Democrat nominee, portraits. So, yeah. But we're almost done talking about politics. We're gonna touch on them once again in the next entry, but for the rest of this entry, it is a strange turn of events that a murderer who escaped from prison suddenly had his body of artwork put in the limelight. Richard Matt was a scumbag, much like his escape partner David Sweat, but I believe we've reached another usage of the age-old question: can you really separate art from artist? If I showed you these portraits with no context behind them, rather than giving you the entire backstory, would you have liked them? Would you appreciate the time and effort that went into them? And if you said yes, then after, if I told you about who did it, would you still consider them good paintings? Hard to say. To be honest, personally, I find Varg Vikernes to be a scumbag, literal convicted murderer, and blatant white supremacist. But damn, dude, philosophum. Hey, the radio still plays Michael Jackson songs. Anyway, on the subject of white supremacy, Emily Eucas. Oh boy, this one needs me to be careful with my words. Look, this is an immense rabbit hole unlike any I've seen before. Upon my first encounter with this person's story, I saw a bunch of people using words that have lost their meaning, like racist, white supremacy, and Nazi. You know, I thought at first glance she was just a conservative and left-leaning people blew her stances out of proportion. But when I started researching myself, names like Richard Spencer, David Duke, and the Daily Stormer came up, and I was like, oh, she's an actual white supremacist. But that's not where the story starts. Okay, so Eucas is mostly known for two things: a degenerate cartoon dog and being the pistachio girl at some Philadelphia Phillies games. Oh, and hating the Jews and non-whites and all that. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This is a deep rabbit hole, one filled with explicit, grotesque sexual content and actual hate-filled rhetoric. And yes, I do feel it necessary to say actual, as the phrase hate-filled rhetoric means nothing these days. But Eucas is, well, at the time of writing this, I don't know, but the last time she was seen, she was a big fan of 1940s German mustache man for real. Okay, so a lot of this info I'm going to keep brief because I would highly recommend a video by YouTuber Broth called Emily Eucas Artist Insanity. It's very comprehensive and basically has all of the key events in Emily's story. There's another video on her that's a bit more popular that you might have seen, but the audio in that video is shit. And that's coming from a guy whose audio sounds like this, and that video was way more subjective too. Broth's video felt more like a just the facts kind of approach. So if you want a full story, go check that video out. I'll put it in the card in the description down below. But for this entry, Yukis is an animator who rose to prominence online as the creator of the Alfred Alfer series, which are a series of essentially edgelord cartoons, at least at first glance. Admittedly, she's actually quite a skilled animator, but her animation skill takes a backseat to the meat and potatoes of the story. In the few interviews she's given about her animations, it might give off the impressions that they were used as somewhat of a coping mechanism for unprocessed trauma. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I believe that's what can be perceived from what she has said about her animations. But you guys want to know about the weirdo shit, don't you? So she was actually a minor celebrity in baseball as she worked as the Philadelphia Phillies pistachio girl and helped make a somewhat semi-viral video. The comments section on it are legendary. I'm glad the video's still up. She was actually extremely popular in Newgrounds in the earlier days when Newgrounds was the place to post stuff. A proto-social media in a way. Honestly, I feel like I should do a documentary about the history of Newgrounds and why that website is so important in the future, but as for more base details, she also sang in some shitty grindcore band, and just so you know, if you're not familiar with the genre, calling a grindcore band shitty is actually praise. But these are just the base details. Where does the madness start? 2016. What a fucking year. Okay, so her first political jab on Twitter was a retweet of David Duke. Now, this is important. This isn't your stereotypical conservative like Tucker Carlson or Ben Shapiro. No, David Duke's all the way off the right, and he's an actual white supremacist. As a matter of fact, he was even a grand wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. Yeah, they got wizards or some shit. I don't know. You think she started a little bit more moderate, but no, 0 to 60, just like that. You might think, well, she makes those disturbing animations, so maybe she was trolling, but it gets worse. Much, much worse. Next up, she appeared at the National Policy Institute, which was hosted by notorious white supremacist Richard Spencer. It's just a convention of a bunch of racists being racist. So she ended up in a confrontation with the protesters at that event and ended up losing her job selling pistachios. At a certain point, she moved to South Korea because left-wing groups were after her. She appeared on white supremacist news platforms like Red Ice and the Daily Stormer. She got involved with some politician that was another racist or something. Honestly, there's so much to this story. I can't recommend Broth's video enough. Like, go watch it. I got a lot of the info in this entry from it as well. This is sort of meant to be like a base overview to make you guys aware of these people and their weird shenanigans. You know? Anyway, I'm getting tired of talking about a racist, so let's just talk about Chris Chan the good ending. Kind of. We'll see. Justin RPG. You know, when I started this Iceberg, I thought Justin RPG was a bit obscure, but since starting, I feel like more people have been made aware of his existence. So, how does he fall into the artist category? Well, technically, he's an artist since he makes photo montages, often incorrectly called collages, of himself and his fictional harem. Now, you might be thinking, okay, so he's got some 2D waifus he likes. Big whoop. Oh, so do I. Look at this shelf right here. But Justin is a bit different. Justin is often referred to as Chris Chan if he didn't feed the trolls, basically. So, Justin has autism, the noticeable amount on the spectrum. He's also a vor fetishist. What's vor? Oh, sweet child, you are far too young to be watching my content. Go play Fortnite and skibbity your Ohio toilets or whatever the fuck y'all do. For the adults remaining in the room, anyone that has been deep into Deviant Art knows about two seemingly obscure fetishes that aren't so obscure anymore, mostly due to cursed Deviant Art posts. Those two being inflation, which we covered with Andrew Dobson, who, stay tuned, we'll be taking a look at his comics in detail in a future video, and the other fetish being vor. In short, vor is people that get turned on by being eaten. You know, like cannibalized. Yeah, it's a thing. Anyway, Justin is considered an artist for his weird photo mashups of himself and his harem of monsters he likes, particularly Reshiram from the Pokemon series. Was like the size of a skyscraper or something. Like, y'all Zoomers gotta help me out here. I only know up to Gen 2. Last one I played was Crystal, and that was when it was new. Fuck, I'm old. Honestly, aside from engaging and occasionally yelling at people online, Justin doesn't really feed the trolls and is mostly harmless. His art pieces are why he landed in this Iceberg, but his music is straight fire.
Human as
long as you love each other, 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 love each other. Sing with me, Restaurant.
So yeah, that particular segment of that particular track is a bit infamous and spawned the Lubby Chutter meme. It's a rare meme, but you know it when you see it. If you want further reading into Justin RPG, rather than me being like, if he makes these weird edits and wants to be vored by Pokemon, you know, with like a little bit more details, I'd recommend Scumbagovich's video on it. Also, MagicMush did a video on him not that long ago, but also talked about another degenerate Pokemon fan called Pampered Shoe. If you don't know, trust me, you absolutely don't want to know. Not now. Not ever. But yeah, I'll link those in the description below so you can get a little bit more details on this guy. But yeah, the long and short of it, he's basically Christian if he didn't feed the trolls with a vor fetish that's obsessed with fictional Pokemon Reshiram. That's the long and short of it. Anyway, there's tons of weird edits he did, and there's plenty more people that have done better videos on the guy. I mean, fetishes are what they are, you know, whatever. As long as you ain't hurting anybody, I could care less, you know. Like, King Pride flag fly, whatever. I just find Justin a bit of an oddball is all, you know. Do I like his pieces? No, they're fucking terrible. Not even shop that good. Anyway, on to another guy that makes terrible artwork. John, F-tier art YouTuber. John is a terrible art YouTuber. He makes these videos of himself drawing and no one watches them, so he decided to branch out and try a different style of video, including shitposts and commentaries. His commentaries seem to be quite successful depending on the timing and subject. However, like most commentary content, it's quite expendable and decays into disposable garbage over time. Shitposts were okay, but usually only did well in a matter of timing, particularly his Creepshowart shitpost when that whole thing was going down. He's also recently expanded into doing art documentary style videos, starting with his The Dark, Weird, and Controversial Artist Iceberg series. This video series definitely catapulted him out of the depths of YouTube, although only a little bit. He's still a relatively small YouTuber, but for very apparent reasons. Some of his videos could definitely use more research, especially these art documentary style videos he's been dipping his toes in. Some of the commentary content is a bit too diplomatic and feels like some enlightened centrist comments are warranted. His comic reviews are simplistically edited, which is not good for a nation of overstimulated youth. He says fucking shit too much in his videos, which is obviously bad for the channel, despite YouTube giving an okay if it's minimal and a few minutes in. But that's forgivable. He's a fucking New Yorker after all. But there's one thing that's killing his channel that he refuses to give up on. Ever since the initial boom of his Iceberg videos, he's still been posting drawing videos that only 1/4 of his audience actually watches. These videos continue to underperform, yet John still posts these videos. Why? Maybe it's because he intended to start out as an art channel and stay that way, but the viewers came for other things? I believe he's experiencing the Geno Samuel effect, which I like to call it. If you're unaware, Geno Samuel is a musician. A very talented one that makes some bangers, I might add. But that's not what people want from Geno, no. Geno started a series called The Comprehensive History of Christian, a very well-produced, well-researched, and well-received docu-series about the life of infamous lolcow Christian. He started this on his second channel, which has 70% more subscribers than the main one he posts his music. I cannot speak personally for Geno, but I'm sure there's a part of him that would rather be known as a musician than that Christian guy. And maybe, just maybe, John doesn't mind doing these Iceberg videos or documentaries, but perhaps would rather be known as an artist rather than an art documentarian. Perhaps part of him is fine with doing these kinds of videos you're watching now. Perhaps not. If he doesn't make these documentary-style videos or these commentary videos, his content doesn't perform. If he does, the content performs. But it's not necessarily what he wants to do, so he's split. Does he do what he wants or do what the people watching want? Who knows? He certainly doesn't. And how do I know? It was me, Barry. It was me the whole time. Or maybe I'll just troll you. I don't give a shit about video performance. I'm just going to make what I want, you know. Maybe. Anyway, guys, that's the end of this Iceberg. So let's wrap this one up. So, that concludes the initial dark, weird, and controversial artist Iceberg, but it ain't quite over yet. I have been compiling suggestions from the comments section as well as a few obvious ones I missed, like Ken Penders and Dolly Flesh, to make one more bonus tier. Hello everyone, and welcome to the final entry in the dark, weird, and controversial artist Iceberg. This is a series of entries that were either forgotten by me, that were relatively obvious, like Dolly Flesh and Schmorky, or entries suggested by you, the viewers. Now, if you suggested an entry for this video and it doesn't appear, it either means I couldn't find any info on it, or it just wasn't that interesting. I'm all for calling out people that do heinous thing, but if your suggestion was this guy that does South Park fan animations was accused of grooming, it probably didn't have enough info and just wasn't that interesting for the video. So as for updates and corrections from the previous tier, firstly, this one actually pisses me off. A number of you claim that the YouTuber Think Before You Sleep never said, and I quote, autism is a fake disability, so here's the G-damn clip.
Second, Raymond needs to practice his social skills, but the problem is that he is way behind socially for a person in his 30s, so probably very few people are going to want to talk to him. He's also unemployed if that's a shock to anyone. He should maybe look for a job because that would at least put him in a position where people are forced to talk to him so he can practice. Outside of that, and continuing with the notion that autism is a fake disability because almost everyone who claims they have it can just train their way out of it, probably the only way that Raymond's going to catch up enough socially to the point where a woman would be willing to date him is to learn conversational skills through therapy out of his comfort zone.
See, he did say that. Alright. Makes me angry when people claim disabilities don't exist. Okay, moving on from that mess, additional information here. The Pokemon Reshiram is 10 foot 6 inches, so not exactly as tall as a skyscraper, but just tall enough to get a few matches on Tinder. I missed a minor detail, well, actually major detail about Emily Yukis that I'll put on screen now, because I can't say it this early in this video, so that's an important part of her lore. Yeah, that one was probably the biggest rabbit hole in the last video. As for an update on the previous entries, just one, that guy John is still making awful videos on art YouTube. Like, wow, he's so bad, he should really stop. Now, I have this image here of the bonus tier, but there will actually be more after it's done, so make sure you watch all the way through, hit the like, the subscribe, and comment and all that. Anyway, one last thing before we begin the final entry, I don't give a shit about your political takes. I try to cover the entries that have politics involved as objectively as I can. Always like to try to squeeze some jokes into my videos for entertainment purposes, because my videos are for the sake of entertainment, alright? You could be the leftiest lefty or the hardest rightoid ever, I do not care. At the end of the day, we are all just human beings and we all have different worldviews and perspectives on things. Just because we disagree on things does not mean that we can't be friends or come up with solutions to issues in this world together. If you're going to take away one thing from this video series, it's that politics are mostly a waste of time. There's more to life than that, okay? Both sides like art, so I just try my best to tiptoe around it when it comes up in this series. Don't waste your time fighting in the comment section, go draw a picture instead. Alright, so there's my little addendum on the political entries. Anyway, that's that. Let's begin. Hitler. Honestly, not much to say on this one. It's pretty well known that Adolf Hitler started out as an artist before shifting careers into genocidal dictator. Very lucrative career path. Probably the epitome of the art versus artist debate, you know? His pieces are technically well executed, however the person behind them is one of the most evil in human history. So do these artworks hold any value at all? I suppose that's for the viewer to decide. Should note that his pieces are entirely devoid of any people at all, mostly landscapes and architecture. So, yeah, that's that. Hitler was an artist. That's how he started out. So, moving along to Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol assassination attempt. Andy Warhol, an artist some would consider the godfather of pop art, once had a brush with death in 1968. The assailant, Valerie Solanas. Valerie Solanas was a radical feminist, most noted for her Scum Manifesto, Scum being an acronym for Society for Cutting Up Men. Personally, I kind of like reading delusional manifestos like this, but honestly, you don't need to these days. Just hop on Twitter and type in the modern feminist catchphrase, you know the one, kill all men, and you'll basically be reading the same thing. Or alternatively, you can read one of those incel forums, and anytime you see the word woman, or in their language, femoid or foid, just replace it with men, and you'll essentially have the same thing. Funnily enough, when the Scum Manifesto was published, it was so extreme that many people thought it was satire, but Solanas Solanas, being as unhinged as she was, clarified that she believed in what she wrote. So, Solanas actually ended up working with Andy Warhol on a few things. She wrote a play called Up Your Ass that she sent to Warhol for review. At a certain point, the script got lost, but Warhol offered her some work in his avant-garde movies. Avant-garde, of course, being the polite way of saying shitty. Sorry, but I've always hated Warhol, and I'll talk more about that in the next entry. So, after writing the Scum Manifesto, she ended up making a deal with Maurice Girodius, a mutual friend of Warhol, about publishing. In short, she backed out of the deal because she believed that Girodius and Warhol were conspiring to steal her work, and to be fair, considering Warhol's most famous works being essentially, in a way, something he didn't necessarily make, I wouldn't trust the guy either. So let's fast forward a bit to the actual shooting. So we already know there's some bad blood between Warhol and Solanas. Despite working together, Solanas obviously didn't trust Warhol at all and hated him because he was male. Just read the Scum Manifesto at your own discretion. Now, there are actually conflicting reports on the timeline. Due to the possibility of Girodius lying to potentially increase the sales of the Scum Manifesto, which he published. So, Solanas might have actually been justified in backing out of working with Girodius for future publishing deals. To make a long story short, since we have so many more entries to get to, and these are all supposed to be general overviews and not deep dives, she went to the factory, which is what Andy Warhol's studio was called, waited for him, took the elevator up with him, fired 3 shots at him, missing the first 2, but landed the third one in his midsection, proceeded to shoot critic Mario. I didn't write his last name. She shot Mario. Oh, no. Proceeded to shoot art critic Mario Amaya, grazing his hip. Tried to shoot Fred Hughes, Warhol's manager at the time, but her gun jammed, and then she left. Warhol went under extensive surgery and had to wear a special corset for the rest of his life. Should also be noted, on the way to shoot Warhol, Solanas stopped at producer Margot Faden's place and talked to her for several hours about producing Up Your Ass, which she refused even when Solanas pulled her gun. Solanas then said that Faden would produce the film because she was going to shoot Warhol and become famous because of it. And, incidentally, here we are talking about this incident years and years later. So, perhaps Solanas was right in the end. Also, Faden called the police, but they refused to intervene. I mean, it was the 60s, so what do you expect? The trial thereafter put Solanas in a mental hospital where she was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. She was actually released in 1971, where she proceeded to stalk Warhol and was subsequently institutionalized. She drifted into homelessness, and there isn't much info on her later life. She passed away in 1988 from pneumonia. Andy Warhol's jizz paintings. Yeah, this one's pretty self-explanatory, and I'm not going to go into detail, and I'm not going to show it, because not only is it icky, but it's just not that good. Christ and piss look better. This might be a good example of something that holds value only because of the name attached to it. These pieces are hanging in museums, unfortunately, and hold a value of around 40 grand. Are you fucking kidding me? I'm just going to say, personally, in my opinion, I think Warhol was a hack, arguably the most overrated artist in history. Like, wow, soup cans. Wow, Marilyn Monroe in different colors. Wow, a 24-hour-long movie of a stationary shot of the Empire State Building. Honestly, fuck this guy. He sucked then, and what he left behind sucks now. Okay? There, I said it. Okay? I do think what Solanas did was very fucked up, and, I'm glad she went to a mental hospital for that, but still, I think he was a terrible artist, personally. That's just my personal opinion. I know I said earlier I was going to be remaining objective, but I fucking hate Andy Warhol. Alright, a little bit off script there. Here we go. What do you guys think of Warhol? Do you actually like what he did, or are you with me in believing he wasn't all that great at all? Holly Brown's cancellation. This one is honestly just dumb. So, Holly Brown is a fellow YouTube artist that was known for making content a bit edgier than other YouTube artists at the time she rose to prominence. If my recollection serves me correctly, she was part of the Fujoshi community and works on a BL comic. And I think she was the one who went viral for getting rejected from CalArts for literally having too good of a sketchbook. But we'll get to CalArts later. Anyway. She's still making videos, vlog-style art time-lapses, pretty standard stuff, but on a second channel. Her first channel was actually called HC Brown. So, D'Angelo Wallace was once an art YouTuber. Now he does typical YouTuber commentary slop. The same thing you'd see on your Drew Goodins, or your Danny Gonzalez's, or your Curtis Connors. It's same fucking garbage. It's garbage. I hate these milquetoast, lukewarm, safe, edgy-ass channels. Sorry. Got a little sidetracked, but I hate that content. But before getting back on track, let me just add, Ludwig is by far the worst one of them all. Okay. Ooh, a little spice. Let's see if we encounter any stands in the comments. Hey, it's cool if you like them. I just find them really fucking dull. Anyway. One day, D'Angelo Wallace woke up and chose violence. Well, not quite. So, here's what happened. Holly Brown did a sketch and traced a part of an image in some Full Metal Alchemist fan art. She posted a work in progress of it, and petty Twitter artist communities flipped the shit. Holly actually made an apology video about it, and that was that. But then D'Angelo Wallace poured gasoline on the fire, and his stands were all up in her comments section. Next thing you know, she loses her channel to hackers and never gets it back. She still uploads videos to her second channel, just titled Holly Brown, like I said, but she did lose a ton of subs in the migration. Personally, I don't think she was 100% in the right, but I think this was one of the most undeserved cancellations of all time. It really wasn't that big of a deal. It really wasn't that bad. Hell, you even got some professional artists on YouTube now telling you that some tracing is actually fine. If I wanted to add something, I really don't like D'Angelo Wallace. Never did. He always rubbed me the wrong way from the first day I came across his content. Seems like a big drama queen. So I guess that's why he's got such petty fans, but is what it is. Kind of fucked up she never got her main channel back. Oh, one thing pretty recently, though, that I kind of feel a need to add. She made a video about the Comicsgate guys a while back that was pretty well done. But she stated, quote, "I don't like the way these guys talk about women's bodies," in reference to the fact that Comicsgate guys understand attractive characters sell things while drawing her BL comic right on screen for everyone to see, you know, about pretty boys, you know? Yeah, a bit hypocritical, yeah? It kind of bothered me enough to add this addendum, but... You know, side note, if you're trying to sell something, you should make the male characters as attractive as possible as well, okay? But, yeah, I'm going off the rails here, but, yeah, I don't think this was really that big of a controversial thing. I think things got conflated, and, yeah, this was kind of R-worded. You know which R-word I'm saying. Ken Penders. Ken Penders is a fucking character, all right. Before we talk about Ken, we need to talk about Sonic the Hedgehog.
Sonic the Hedgehog, one of the greatest and most attractive characters ever thought up. He can run at sound speed, take out enemies in a flash, and best of all, he's blue-colored and knows how to handle the females.
That's honestly the best video on the goddamn internet. Anyway, Sonic the Hedgehog got a comic book published by Archie. I actually used to read it back in the day. Archie Sonic is notorious for being absolutely fucking bonkers, and to be honest, most fans kind of love it for that, myself included. And they have one man to thank for that, and that's Ken Penders. Now, since this is a general overview, I'd be here literally all day if I gave you the entire comic lore, so I'd recommend Low Art's multi-part series covering the comic story. It's very long, but it's very good. If you want an in-depth look at Penders himself, aside from the surface-level info I'm about to give you, Comic Drake did a pretty good video, and so did Matt. That's 4 T's. Kind of dumb, bro. Maybe I should change my name to John. So, Penders. He gets on the comic in the early days and shifts it into a darker direction. He also takes a special interest in Knuckles the Echidna and gets put in charge of Knuckles' spin-off comic, which is mandatory for a clear timeline of Archie Sonic if you wanted to read it. He had this Native American story he wanted to do that he kind of put on the Echidnas. He also has an infamous tweet about his Sonic OC, Jeffrey the Skunk, doing things with Princess Sally Eggcorn. Also, there's that Age of Consent tweet. Big fucking yikes on that one, dude. Oh yeah, there was also the Sonic movie pitch, which was awful. Just fucking awful. He also did this weird one-shot called Sonic Live, where he superimposed live photos of his kids and they got sucked into the Sega Genesis world or something. He took the comic in very weird directions. A lot of people were kind of disturbed by some of his artwork, which honestly, fair. We'll be getting back to disturbing artwork, but we have to go over how happy he was. Let's see. So he sued Sega over the Sonic Chronicles game because of how similar certain elements were to his weird Knuckles lore, which in all fairness, making comparisons, he kind of did have a case. The similarities were extremely noticeable. Then there's the infamous end to the Archie Sonic comics. So, the Archie Sonic comics have become notorious for unresolved plot lines in the latter days, mostly due to Pender's strange writing style. Eventually, Archie hired on superfan Ian Flynn, who actually wrote a ton of fan letters over the years and actually ended up writing the last mainline Sonic game, Sonic Frontiers. Penders got fired and Flynn cleaned up his mess, resolving decades-old plot points. However, at a certain point, Penders sued Archie and won. Something to do with character ownership. You know how the big comics publishers like to screw over the creators if you're into comics, so, you know, I guess that's a win for creators. But he won, and the characters he made were taken out of the comic, and the comic was eventually canceled when someone at Sega saw the contents of the comic and said, hey, wait a minute, maybe we should be a little more caring when it comes to what people do with their brands and when we license them out, instead of letting this guy write this really weird and mature story that isn't really hitting the target demographic of kids. Maybe? I don't know, guys. I don't know, boss. And then Sonic got a reboot in IDW Comics, ending the streak of the longest running licensed comic ever without a reboot or retcon. There was also the recent incident after Sonic 2 came out, the movie, where he was threatening to sue Sega again over Knuckles stuff because he calls himself a Knuckles father or something, or father of Knuckles. I don't know. Anyway, Penders, now owning his OCs, went on to make the Laura Sue Chronicles. He also made a movie that was never released. I forget what it was called. I'll put it on screen. But, like, when is it coming, Ken? But the Laura Sue Chronicles, oh boy, the Laura Sue Chronicles, takes his OCs and starts this mature space opera story where they have made up swear words but show tits. Don't know how that works, but this comic was in production for years and only recently released. I was actually considering doing a review for it for my comic review series, but some other people already made good videos about it, and I figured, like, alright, that ship has sailed already. The general consensus is that it wasn't that good, and Pender's new art style is very, very off-putting and unpleasant to the eye. Although, to be honest, if he puts out a book too, I might actually give it a shot. Speaking about things with uncanny proportions, yaoi proportions. This entry is just in reference to how strange some of the proportions are in yaoi manga, or boys love /BL as it's commonly referred to. These dudes have absurdly long necks and the most terrifying pair of hands you ever did see. Like, good lord. While the target demographic of these manga are women, frequently referred to as fujoshi, roughly translating to rotten girl, which we already covered, I can't help but think that there are probably some heterosexual women also put off by this. I understand that women are usually particular about men's hands. I guess they prefer larger, rougher, manlier hands. Sure. But these things are freaks of nature, man. Obviously, not every yaoi manga looks like this, but a lot do. It's not really my kind of genre, but hey, if you watching this are a fujoshi or even a fudanshi, which is the male equivalent, do you like these proportions or do you like something more realistic? Personally, it scares the shit out of me. Statue/art destruction. This one checks off the controversial and dark, weird, and controversial. So, this entry refers to times that artworks or statues have been destroyed, whether intentionally or not. There's, of course, the famous example of the Library of Alexandria, where a fire broke out and burned down tons and tons of precious books and whatever else may have been in there. But I actually want to focus on more recent examples. So there's a really funny one done by Banksy. Banksy is what you would call a street artist. I'd say a muralist, but he engages in illegally putting his art on walls, so I believe the term street artist is more applicable. He had a painting auctioned off for $25.4 million, and it shredded itself the second it was sold. Epic troll. That's the only W he's getting from me. I always thought his stuff was mid. And I actually saw someone agree with that when I asked for your hot art takes, which hey, if you're watching this far into this video, give me your hottest art takes down below. I need you to make content off of. Please. Running out of ideas here. There's also the debate around statues of Confederate soldiers. So if you're from outside the United States, a little thing called the Civil War happened. It was between the years of 1861 and 1865. Essentially, the country split into two, the Confederacy and the Union, the South and the North respectively, and they had a big old war over slavery. The Confederacy wanted to keep slavery, and the Union wanted to abolish it. And a lot of people died. And that's sort of the long and short, really abridged version of the Civil War. Go watch the History Channel if you want more on that. So there were some statues made of Confederate soldiers and commanders, and over time people wanted them destroyed, and a lot did get destroyed in the aftermath of George Floyd's death during the 2020 riots. Excuse me. The 2020 mostly peaceful protests. Come on, look at this image. Like, are you kidding me? I'm not going to get into that stuff. Racism is bad. Violence is also bad, okay? Real fucking radical take, I know. But this opened up a debate of whether or not these statues of the losers of a war should even be made in the first place. Personally, I think they should be put in museums and not out in the public square, but that's just my take. What's yours? And when we're talking about the destruction of art, we have to talk about Just Stop Oil. Just Stop Oil is an environmentalist group who are more known for being obnoxious twats than preserving the environment. Yes, I did pronounce twat Britishly, because this group is based out of Britain. Or is it England? I don't know. I never understood that. Like, is it Britain? Is it England? I know the UK, like, that's it's part of Scotland, I think. No, it's all Scotland and, like, a little bit of Ireland. I don't know. I'm American. I don't care. USA, baby. I don't know. Anyway, they're known for throwing soup at some Van Goghs, which luckily were behind glass, but still, wow. What an asshole. They also glued themselves to the street, so everyone who's going to their job, a thing these protesters clearly don't have, has to idle in their cars emitting more gas while the police remove them than they would have if they didn't glue themselves in the first place, which is really counterintuitive. Of course, there was the recent Stonehenge incident, where they spray-painted Stonehenge for some reason. I believe it was a Japanese tourist that stopped them while the British natives looked on like, oh bollocks, it's these fucking wankers being fucking muppets again. Beans on toast. Sorry, it's been a minute since I made fun of British people. I just had to get it out of my system. I love you, Britain. Alright, you cool. You cool. I'm all for the renewable energy, recycling, electric vehicles, and all that stuff. I think most people are, but people that behave like this for the climate make me want to pollute deliberately. Could honestly be an iceberg all its own, but I just wanted to highlight a few recent examples. I'm not particularly in favor of it, but I do understand why people will want something like Confederate statues removed. I still believe that they should have been put in a museum and not just destroyed, but those are my thoughts. What are yours? Now, Flesh John's got a message for you. Wow, you can really see my balding from this angle. Wow, that's really bad. Keeps, hit me up, bro. Nah, I just shave it anyway. Alright, so, Flesh John here. How you guys doing? What's going on? How you doing? So, I was going to split this into two, but I've decided that I'm done covering dark stuff. There is far too much negativity and awful stuff in this world, and if I continue down this path of darker content, I'd be contributing to it. At first, I thought this would be an interesting series to do, and I do think it is, at the very least, interesting. However, after a while, I started realizing that I was just sort of exploiting the horrors and tragedies of the world, you know, to twist into entertainment and even a bit of profit. Well, I'm sure if you watch the entire series or the inevitable supercut that's going to come out after I'm done recording this segment, you enjoyed it and were educated on some of the most awful things in the art community, I cannot, in good conscience, continue covering this kind of stuff. However, I'm not against doing another Iceberg-like series. I actually found one pretty recently on webcomics that might be a good follow-up, especially considering I do some webcomic reviews. I'm done covering dark, horrible stuff, okay? It's not good for my mental. I don't want to keep contributing awful stuff to this world. I already make a really dark fantasy comic. I was going to say it was a dark fantasy, but like, it's dark fantasy, but it's also a dark story, which has like 5 readers, so shout out to like the 5 readers. Yeah, read Doomsayer. Link in description. Mature content, adult audiences only. But there's a few more entries suggested by you, the viewers, and a couple of things I came up with myself, so I'm just going to go rapid fire on these next few and wrap this thing up, so let's go. Toxic paint. Toxic paint refers to paint made out of chemicals that were actually poisonous to humans, most notably lead paint, which used to be used in everything way back, and of course, cadmium. Everyone loves when Bob Ross uses some of that sweet cadmium red. So essentially, this entry just refers to the fact that throughout history, various toxic paints have been used. There is, however, one extremely notable incident in history with toxic paint that's worth mentioning, and that's the Radium Girls. So, it was the 1920s, watch factories, New Jersey, Illinois, and Connecticut. These women worked on painting the dials and used their mouths to bring the brushes to a point with a luminous paint or paint that glows in the dark. Should be noted that they were told to use their mouths to point the brushes. That's how they were trained. The pay was horrible, and the people in charge knew of the dangers of luminous paint, but they didn't care about these workers. A lot of them died from radiation poisoning. These incidents had a profound effect on research involving radiation and, of course, labor rights. I'm sure there's some well-produced documentary on this out there, because I have a vague recollection of seeing something like that way back, but can't pinpoint it. Maybe it was on the Science Channel or something like that, but yeah, toxic paint. You know, keep an eye out for that stuff. Schmorky. Oh boy, Schmorky. Schmorky was an animator who went nuts, essentially. She, if I believe I'm using the appropriate pronouns, you know, just trying to be respectful, was responsible for the "This Is Fine" meme. Was a household name, did big things, and eventually logs leaked of her being a, quote, adult baby diaper lover, end quote. Do not research. She liked to shit her pants or something, I don't know. It's honestly a whole thing. I'd recommend MagicMush's video on it. There's also a really funny conspiracy that she became stone-tossed doing a complete 180 on her politics. But that's been debunked since the stone-toss doxing incident. Which, once again, folks, don't dox people. That's not cool. AI album art. There are bands and artists using AI for their album covers. It's really shitty. And it might get them sued eventually. Stay tuned for a video that I've been brainstorming called A Final Critique of AI Art, or something along those lines. That's going to be this big project documenting its history and controversies, as well as one last final critique on it. Dali Flesh. Dali Flesh was a claymation animator. He was also an incel if you couldn't tell by his haircut. He made some really disturbing animations, and it came out that he tortured some animals. Very serial killer vibes. To my knowledge, he left the internet. Not sure if he paid for what he did to those innocent animals. Ricardo Lopez. Ricardo Lopez was a relatively unknown artist. As a matter of fact, not much is known about his actual art. He's mostly known as the Bjork Stalker. He made a video diary of his obsession with the Icelandic singer, spiraling into madness and eventually taking his own life. There were also some dangerous packages he shipped in the mail that luckily were detected and failed. There's a pretty good video by Count Dankula chronicling his madness, and I'll link it in the description. CalArts Conspiracy. CalArts Conspiracy refers to the art style of various cartoons created by people who attended the school CalArts. It's heavily classified by the bean-shaped heads. A lot of people cited the cartoon Steven Universe for the origin of the style. However, funnily enough, Rebecca Sugar, the creator of Steven Universe, actually did not attend CalArts. There's a pretty good video by Just a Robot on the subject if you want to learn more. I think Channel Frederator did one too. Purple Kecleon. Purple Kecleon is a Pokemon fan artist that's been accused of grooming minors. That's it. I don't like researching those kinds of people, yeah. Also, if you're a minor watching my channel, you probably shouldn't be. Go play Fortnite and watch Skibbity Riz or whatever the hell. Moving on. Ridiculous Cake. Looking into this one, I couldn't find much. This artist does some animations and fat fetish art, which, you know, whatever. I believe they got some YouTube strikes. That's about all I got. I don't know. Maybe you guys could provide more context for this one in the comments. Animated James, another YouTube animator accused of grooming. I swear, every YouTuber that's big that I've never heard out turned out to be a groomer. Like, every single one. I mean, hey, it's a pretty good thing that I was a hag maxer back when it was called MILF hunting, okay? I've always liked older women, okay? Well, what can I say? Anyway, moving on. Wolfie Chew. Okay. So, from what I understand, Wolfie Chew is a storytime animator similar to channels like The Odd Ones Out, you know, stuff like that. And she got canceled for having a high-pitched voice. Like, people are angry that she has a higher-than-average voice. Like, that's it. Like, they got angry over that. What is wrong with people? Next, Puppy Chan. Puppy Chan came up previously in the Antunes entry. They were friends, then they weren't, and Puppy Chan not only pretended to be Asian, which, like, what the fuck, dude? Guess what she did? Go on, guess. Come on. Drum roll. I can't do a good drum roll noise. Grooming. What the fuck is with these YouTube animators and grooming? Not cool, guys. And once again, if you're a minor watching this, get out. Get out. My content is intended for an adult audience. I see that like 1% and it has me very concerned. Rebornica. Rebornica was a Five Nights at Freddy's fan artist. Based on surface level research, she disappeared one day, came back years later to harass someone that was drawing a similar style, likely influenced by her work, and was a big asshole about it. There were some accusations of stealing characters that were OCs of a franchise she didn't create. Funny that, yeah? And then Rebornica disappeared again. Luckily not a groomer this time, just an asshole. Bleed Man. Bleed Man was an artist that drew lolly fan art. That's it. Shit's creepy and weird. We already covered it. Fuck that guy. Next, Louis Quiles. Louis Quiles is an artist that draws some unsettling pieces, sometimes bordering on pornographic and sometimes grotesque. That's about it. To be honest, personally, I don't really like his pieces. His colors are kind of shit, and the rendering looks kind of peculiar, almost like it was partially traced, but hey, if you like it, that's fine, whatever. But finally, we're taking a break from the kitty diddlers. Walter Keane. Walter Keane is the most famous art plagiarist in history. He passed off paintings created by his wife Margaret as his own in the 60s. Yeah, that's it. I might touch on him again when I get around to making that final critique on AI art video that I've been planning in the back of my head. Probably sometime in like November or December even. Bob Kane. Most people know Bob Kane as the creator of Batman. It was actually a guy named Bill Finger. Kane stole all the credit, so yeah. Another infamous example of art plagiarism, which is something that we will be revisiting when I finally get to that AI video. And that's it. No more dark stuff, okay? Researching this, honestly, was not fun. And I, personally, don't feel good about it. Feels like I'm sort of exploiting the horrors of the world and trying to, like, reverse engineer it into entertainment and profit. And I just feel icky about it, okay? But I did want to finish this because I said I would. I just want to do art videos, honestly. I know they won't perform as well as these darker videos, but I don't care. Anyway, guys, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for watching and hanging with me throughout this horrifying journey through some of the strangest and some of the most horrible people in the art world. Why don't you check out another video of mine? I do make some art on this channel, if you're not aware. And I'm assuming if you've been watching this series, you like art. Alright? So yeah, that's the end. I'll see you next time, but before you go, I just want to say, thank you for watching this video.